Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And on this channel, we cover everything Alberta Independence. We do it live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Tuesday, we do geopolitics, but we take the overflow of all the stories we kind of missed on Monday. And 7 days a week, we try to put out an edited video about Alberta Independence or Alberta Independence related. If you're not yet subscribed, please do so. It really helps grow the channel. We're extremely small. Every single subscriber helps at this point, especially because censorship is set to come in massively in Canada over the next couple of weeks with these bills Carney's pressing through.
Exactly. Especially subscribe because it's free and it really does help us out. But first of all, I'll say hello to Joe Rush. Thank you for being here. Says good evening, everyone. Hope you're having a good day and hope that too. And also remind you, I will remind you to subscribe, but we also read all your comments. So please do let us know what you think. And it makes the conversation more interesting.
Well, and John Bolton was recommended to us we're kind of profiling content creators that are supporting Alberta Independence. Very impressive. I'm watching him on a regular basis now. We are going to profile him probably next week. We're going to film something tomorrow. That being said, I brought him up for a reason though.
I don't know your reason.
Yeah, it completely slipped my mind. Okay, let's get into
I don't read your mind yet.
Oh, I was going to say, we do start every show with everything that's going on with the petition and the signatures. Today, it's pretty heavy. It's the first 10 stories are going to be about that. Then we're going to get more into the meat and potatoes of what's going on in Alberta Independence.
But first of all, I do want to read these few comments from Wild Rose Republic of Alberta because they're pretty encouraging. So says, Alberta Independence is our final hope. This is it, folks. No more chances. Never give in. Even if the vote doesn't work out, we will fight till the end, until you separate, and never capitulate ever. We are revolutionaries. It will take an army to stop us. And I do agree. And again, it needs to be that mindset that it is the final straw, but it is also the final hope. And that is why we're talking about it so much, because as people that left Canada, disappointed and disillusioned, this gives that glimmer of hope that we were looking for. And it makes sense to try to push it until it works.
This is the single biggest geopolitical issue that's happening worldwide. A lot of people might not realize it, but it's also interlinked with private property rights, what's going on in BC and across Canada as well. But this could change the dynamic and the paradigm between the elites that are running countries and the citizens that are actually growing the country and making it work. If that paradigm can change, you're going to see other countries and other regions do the same, specifically the EU. I wouldn't be surprised if Saskatchewan and BC leave, although the government is trying to give private property rights.
BC is insane.
Private property rights away, so BC won't be able to find their own independence, and I think that's a big reason why that's happening with the land grabs in BC. We just made an edited video on that.
It came out today, so go watch it if you haven't watched it. It really does help us. Every view counts. And if you like the videos we do edited, please do share them as well with other people who might be interested or who are fighting for Alberta independence.
Well, and I will say we're a little bit different than every other Alberta Independent show that does do updates. We do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but I'm the one that gathers the story. I was counting how many stories I typically get. I typically gather 100. I narrow it down to 50. We typically get between 40 and 80 stories we cover on the show. Most shows will do 6 to 10. So we might not BS as much as other shows, but if you want the facts and what's going on with Alberta Independence, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you get your full dose of it and you'll firmly know what's going on in the movement.
And also, I don't want to say never, but never say never. However, we are pretty much uncensorable since we are outside of Canada, so we can continue to talk about this regardless of the censorship they'll start implementing. And we do want to help those that are still within Canada to get their voices heard as well when and if that happens.
Yeah, this is one of the big things, and this is some of the big stories we're having today. Again, Bill C-9 seems to be coming in probably later this week or next week. Carney's not going to have a debate for it. He's going to run a snap election on that. He's going to bring censorship in. Alberta Independence has to be on the top of that list. They're going to want to shut it down and create their own narrative. They're going to go after content creators that live in Canada. That's why the Alberta Independence movement needs to build a community of international content creators, not only like us, but we also profiled Glenn Beck. Clyde Do Something is moving to the States as well. So it's going to be very hard for them to arrest certain content creators that don't live in Canada. But really do focus on Canadian independence or Albertan independence because we feel betrayed by the federal government. Let's get into the first story. That was a big opening, and I know we have a ton of stories. Monday's show typically has the most stories because
the weekend,
Saturday, Sunday, we didn't do anything.
Yes, so starting with what's going on with the petition and some updates from Marty up north, quote, saying this lunatic came to harass our crew on the north side of the highway where they were set up every day. When we started filming her, she grabbed the phone out of his friend's hand and threw it in the ditch because that is the level of intelligence these people have.
Yeah, and this is kind of what petitioners are facing when they're trying to get these signatures. And this is about 5% of the people are either like this. Most of them don't actually get physical. Luckily, this wasn't an actual man. So, I mean, how seriously are you going to take this? But charges do need to be pressed here so we can set a precedent. This is election interference at this point.
So I have a lady here. It's actually, there's a...
Oh, there's water there.
Who just threw my phone into the water, and there's a $25,000 fine for election interference, and this will be going to Elections Alberta, and you will be getting a call, and you will be getting fined. I already got it. So keep it here, and you're going to get charged. Okay. So I have a lady.
Yeah, and there needs to be a stop put to this, and the Alberta Independence Movement has been recommending you bring your phone so you can videotape or some kind of GoPro or 360 cam and just have it sit up there in case anything like this happens. We used to work with Billboard Chris, and he used to get a lot of kind of crazies approaching him as well, but he always had a 360 camera, and he was always able to put that on social media later, and surprisingly, that really did help him grow, and it really stopped the government from sitting a narrative around him.
Not fully, because they did allow to, they tried to say that he was the one provoking people and banned him from the art gallery for about 6 months. That was a long time ago, but that's when we were volunteering with him that I remember we couldn't even cross through the art gallery because of the insanity of the government. But I will say to that lady, if she has so much, well, she's not a lady, but to that woman, if she has so much time on her hands, she could be going to the gym and use that rage to, make a positive change in her life.
Well, as soon as they told her that was election interference, you can see she wanted to hop in her car and leave, and then she doubled back and hit the flag down. Absolutely ridiculous behavior. I'm expecting to see more and more of this. A lot of the stories today are going to focus on the financing of this and how different NGOs, different groups are now being financed by the federal government. This seems like if it's not illegal, it should definitely be illegal.
Let's continue. From John R. Bolton, for the skeptics, it was amazing with hundreds coming out, hundreds signed the petition. And again, these are updates from over this weekend and Friday.
So here at the Auburn Bay Dog Walk Park right now, we just had a slow roll come in. You might be able to see all the vehicles on the other side of the fence with their Alberta flags. We're starting to fill up the parking lot here. It's insane. We've got pizza coming up in just a moment. So these people are doing a slow roll from Sukhumi Lake here in South Calgary, just down in Fish Creek Park. And I think they're heading up to Red Deer today. So all coming out today to support the Alberta Independence Movement. Unfortunately, right now, the bouncy castle's down. It's been a little bit windy, but the sun has come out. So we're hoping to put that back out. We have had some kids out this morning jumping on the bouncy castle. I'm hoping to get on the bouncy castle myself, but check this out. It's unbelievable. What a great day here in Southeast Calgary at the Auburn Bay Dog Walk Park. Try to get an interview with Al Burton and his wife. Wonderful people here. The discussions we've had today have been unbelievable here. Talking about Alberta independence is so much optimism. So talk to you later. It's been a great day so far. Still got hours to go here.
And that is John Bolton. We're going to profile him next week with content creators that are supporting the Alberta Independence Movement. We've profiled quite a few internationally as well as within Alberta and national Canada. What I was going to say is it's very important. The weather's now starting to warm up. You're seeing big groups come out to these petition signings now. And even though it's warming up in Alberta, it's still very cold, but it's warm enough where people are willing to come out and it's not desolate anymore. It's great to see so many people there and engaged in conversation so we can build an excitement, especially because the federal government, along with First Nations, is currently trying to derail this petition. Why don't you get more into that a little bit?
Yeah, and Marty has been talking also and a lot of people within the petition movement and the canvassers have been apparently instructed, or at least told that it would be best to get all of the signatures in before April 7th, when that complaint, I guess, from the First Nations goes through, like starts ramping up and goes through. So I don't know how much of a good idea it is, but they're trying to get in all the signatures before that starts.
Yeah, First Nations is trying to derail, saying there should be no further signatures being allowed to gather. That's going to go in front of the court on the 7th. So this is why there is this huge push right now. If you haven't signed, or you know somebody that hasn't signed that is thinking about signing or on the fence, now is the time to get that, because if they're able to stop the signatures, but we already have 177,000, that's going to be absolutely huge. There's no real rumors of where these signatures are at. I wish there was an insider that kind of came out and let the movement know how close are we.
But they can't. But I also think it's always best to think there's less than more. So you just keep going until the end, until they're in, and then continue going until the referendum.
Oh God, I had somebody, let me see if I have it here.
And then I was also going to say it is good to see the bouncy castle. If you remember the days of the Freedom Convoy, that is essentially what triggered the Emergencies Act from the insanity that was Trudeau. But it's good to see it back out. There are some people that, again, want to derail the movement, trying to say, this is interference too, et cetera, et cetera. But come on, it's a bouncy castle, and I don't think it's... You want me to read that?
I'm going to get you to read this. Somebody left a comment on our last video. His name was Yo Daddy 1974. That being said, I think this was important information to kind of get out. It was some stuff that I didn't know, so...
Says, for anyone who doesn't live in Alberta and may not understand how things work, it's no coincidence that the First Nations are going to court on April 7th, and no coincidence Elections Alberta messed around with petitioners. The timing is key. In Alberta, April 15th is considered the start of spring breakup. This is when the spring thaw starts and oil and logging companies start shutting down activities until the frost is out of the ground. More working class people would be home for a break and would be able to sign the petition and be available as well. This is nothing more than, and I'm guessing, a coordinated effort to stop it. So
yeah, and now it really does make a lot of sense why the first time they're going to try to derail this petition is coming on the 7th. The 15th, that's when a lot of these blue-collar workers are going to come home. The weather is warming up. Even without a lot of the workers home, just having the weather warm up, you're seeing a mass influx of people going to these petition booths.
Yep.
Most people were getting between 5 and 10 a day. Now it's up to like 20 to 25 at a lot of these petitions.
And also canvassers and door knockers being able to spread out a lot more. They changed a little bit of the strategy with that, like DoorDash, and so you can go sign at DoorDash for signatures. And it seems like they're getting about 60% positive rate when they're going door knocking and getting signatures that way. So that is also good. And now with the weather warming up a bit and things thawing, as we saw there, I mean, there's still a lot of snow on the ground, but with most of it thawing, it's easier to move around too.
Yeah, and I will say again, the opening of every single show, especially on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with their lives, all focuses on the petition and really driving that forward. Even more so now that there's this kind of preemptive date of the 7th, where we're hoping to get at least 177,000 signatures by that point. Mm-hmm. If we have it by that point and the courts don't stop us, hopefully we can go to 500,000 or 1 million. But today, I think there's about 10 stories that are focusing around canvassing and the petition.
Yes. Like this one from Alberta Proud Dad, quote, "Paving the path to Alberta independence was never going to be easy. Nobody said it would be." Chris Scott from the Whistle Stop Cafe lays it out in the clip.
That's what it is. We're not granted sovereignty in that we chart our own course. We're allowed to self-govern under these rules. And that's why we don't have rights like what they have in the United States. The United States, they declared their independence. They had a war. They fought and bled and died. And then men suffered greatly to get that freedom. And we never had that here in Canada. So Alberta Independence is the first opportunity in Canada for the people to actually decide how they want to be governed and affirm their rights as human beings.
Yeah, and that's an absolute fact. This is going to be the real time. This is going to be the first real time Canadians really get independence. And a lot of the movement wants a constitutional republic, much like the United States. I like that idea as well. Although I'll go around some of the pitfalls in the debate and the discussions a little later. But the other train of thought is, let's just go back to the Canadian Constitution before Justin Trudeau's dad, Pierre Trudeau. I don't like that move at all. There needs to be a firm constitution where those constitutional rights can't be taken away even in an emergency. That's what we've seen during the jibby jab era, why the truckers' protests got so big, everything like that. The Constitution is the framework that's going to allow Alberta to stand for generations after generations.
And I mean, again, Canada is still part of the Commonwealth. I mean, it's still not fully sovereign, even though, of course, in actuality, it does feel that way. It's still tied to that system too. So,
well, yeah, the signatures just allow us to get to that stage where we can kind of negotiate and figure out what the new constitution is going to be. It also allows us, if it does get derailed later on for some reason, which God forbid, it gives us a lot more negotiating power at the table with the federal government. So.
And here from Marty up north again says, quote, opponents are trying to prevent us from exercising our democratic right to petition the government. Let that sink in. It's the equivalent of trying to stop voting. And exactly. And they don't see it that way, although they fill their mouths with democracy this, democracy that.
Well,
blah,
no,
blah, blah.
They just absolutely pander to the Laurentian elite and Quebec. They want to separate. They can have a separatist party. They can have everything they want because those are liberal voters. The national liberals in Canada just don't want to lose. It would absolutely change the dynamic of Canada and turn it conservative of Quebec. Left. The problem with Alberta is it's all conservatives, so the federal government thinks it can treat it like a doormat.
April 7th to April 10th. That's when a group will be in court seeking an injunction against the independence question that is before Albertans. Let that sink in. They're asking in court to stop this question from moving forward. That is exactly why what we do right now matters so much. Between now and April 7th, we need to gather as many signatures as humanly possible. Not casually, not when it's convenient, full throttle. Because when the people show up in overwhelming numbers, when support is undeniable, when participation is massive, that matters. It sends a message that this isn't a fringe idea. This is Albertans demanding to be heard. There are people trying to discourage us. There are people hoping we lose momentum. There are people telling you this won't work. Don't buy it. Movements succeed when ordinary people refuse to quit. We cannot control what arguments get made in the courtroom, but we can control how strong this movement becomes before then. We can control how many signatures we collect. We can control how many conversations we have. We can control how visible and undeniable this effort becomes. If you're signed, get 5 more people to sign. If you've been collecting signatures, double your efforts. If you've been sitting on the sidelines, now's the time to step in. Knock doors, call friends, text family, show up at events, have the respectful conversations. Do it peacefully, do it lawfully, do it with confidence. April 7th is coming fast. Let's make sure that by the time that hearing begins, the message is clear. Albertans deserve the right to answer the independence question themselves. No intimidation, no delay tactics, just democracy. Push every single day, get the signatures, let's go.
Yeah, and let's kind of take this as an absolute blessing, not a curse. We have this early deadline coming up where if we can hit 177,000 signatures by then, after then, all the blue-collar workers are coming home. The weather's going to be heating up. The sky's the limit at that point. Potentially, we can get 500,000 to 1 million after that.
Unfortunately, I think if they submit the signatures at that date, as they're planning to do, that's why I said I don't know if that's such a good idea. You can't put in any after. So it would be whatever they get in this month. It's 1 month, and 1 month seems like a very short amount of time, but it also seems like a very long amount of time. It depends on how you see it.
It's not a long amount of time at all, especially if they're trying to sabotage the signatures and they're getting people to get canvassers badged, going through the training and then gathering fake signatures to make the movement think we have more than enough. With 177,000, we need at least, I would say, 325,000 to guarantee every signature is authentic, not duplicated. Yeah, I didn't realize that when you just said that. How did you know that? And I didn't.
I think the Fringe was going over it the other day.
Oh man, that's bad. And that now you can see exactly why they're trying to derail.
But again, whenever we get anything wrong, I put it in the, I do corrections all the time on our lives. So I'll double check. Just don't take our word for it just now. But I think that's what it is.
Well, this is a win-win for the federal government here because number one, they're going to try to stop the minimum mandate of 177,000. But even if that's we wanted to send a message with 1 million signatures, and now the general public is not going to be able to see that million. It's not going to give as much leverage over the federal government. I see exactly why they're using First Nations tribes here to try to derail this movement. Also, it looks like it puts all the onus on First Nations and not on the federal government, which is crazy.
Yeah. Again, using them once again, which is insane. And But
I wouldn't say using all First Nations. I would say it's using the elites inside the tribes.
Yeah.
A lot of the members don't agree with the way the elites are running these tribes, kind of hoarding a lot of the cash wealth that's coming in, how they're working hand in hand with the federal government.
However, there are still signatures going on even outside of Alberta, like here in Puerto Vallarta, without the car bombs and the violence, apparently, because it looks really nice. But Rise of Alberta says Alberta Independence petition signing event in Puerto Vallarta today. And I think I said Puerto Rico initially, sorry, Puerto Vallarta in Mexico. Even on a beach in Mexico, Albertans are showing up and signing. The movement is everywhere. And we did talk about this. There's going to be another one, I believe, March 15th, also in Puerto Vallarta. But when it gets closer, I'll re-announce it again.
Yeah, there are a ton of snowbirds in the United States, in Arizona, in Florida. Here in Mexico, there is a ton. And it's good to see they're bringing the Alberta flags out. They're taking time out of their vacation because they absolutely believe in this. And I think
I wish I was there. Keep saying I want to go to the beach. It's not close to where we are.
we live in Mexico City, and Mexico City, a lot of people don't know, the weather can be somewhat like Vancouver, I guess. A lot of rain, not quite as cold, but
Wind.
it gets a lot colder than the rest of Mexico.
Yeah, because we're up in the mountains. It's actually one of the highest elevation cities in the world.
Yeah.
Mexico City is. You suffered through it.
I think Chile's a little higher, though.
Santiago? No.
No?
No,
Oh,
Mexico.
okay.
I know it. But let's continue. Also from Jeff Rath, just spoke with one of the organizers for Springbank, Alberta. Hundreds of people coming out to sign. Lots of young people, which I continue to say is very important, to make young people understand that this is their future and they could have a hand in a historical moment as well. Lots of Chinese Canadians who don't want to live in communist Canada because they left for a reason. So way to go, Chris, he says.
Man, I'm a little bit disappointed now that once those 178,000 are submitted.
If they do decide to submit them before April 7th, that's the thing. I don't know if they fully
Yeah,
said
but they need
will.
to play it safe. And if they have it, they need to submit it at that point.
But I know if...
Because getting those signatures all the way up until the very end kind of helps momentum, kind of drive the movement forward, creates conversations in local outlets, bars, churches, stuff like this.
I mean, I'd love to continue our outreach to try and interview some of the organizers just to figure these things out. So if you know any, please let them know. We've sent the messages and to reply to us, please. But let's continue also with Marty up north with a reminder that if you have your Elections Alberta badge and some sign-up sheet, you don't need additional permission to start collecting signatures for the Alberta Independence Citizens Initiative. Here's an infographic with some
Okay,
ideas.
and why don't we just read the green ones right there?
Okay.
And just the bold headings of the greens.
So that canvassers are allowed to set up anywhere that costs nothing. Organize.
So we're reading this green section because if you are a canvasser, I know a lot of canvassers are sitting up in desolate areas, non-foot trafficked areas. These are some ideas. If you've never canvassed before or been part of a political movement, how to kind of maximize your effort.
Okay, so set up anywhere that costs nothing, organize and host home events, promote to yourself as a canvasser, create and share digital posters, work with local businesses, visit seniors' residences and apartment buildings, collect signatures in public spaces, including sidewalks, outside municipal offices, municipal, provincial, or federally funded parks, and recreation center parking lots.
Yeah, and there are a ton of small content creators like us, but there's a lot of other ones in Alberta as well and internationally. When you go on YouTube, you'll see them. They will interview anybody from Alberta that is a canvasser, somebody that wants to sign a petition. So if you have a spot you go to on a regular basis and you want people to know, just contact shows like this. Our email's in the description. We'll interview anybody to kind of help get the word out there.
And just quickly, just because it's there too, it says, when do you need approval? And it says authorization is required if you book a venue, even if the venue is donated, or you use the Stay Free Alberta logo. Logos must be approved by the leadership. So I thought those 2 points were important.
Yeah. And what story are we on now?
This one from Freedom Honey. Quote,
one moment before you go into this story. I put this in the opening segment when it comes to the petition, the signatures and stuff like that, but this is absolutely shocking. This is not just going on in Alberta. It's a betrayal of unions in general that's happening within the United States and Canada. A lot of people might be a part of a union. We used to be part of the Teamsters and work for the Teamsters on film sets. It's an absolute shame how the government entices them with money, benefits through DEI and ESG. They have to follow a lot of these policies, and the leadership has went in a completely different direction than the actual members. That's why you're seeing in the United States and Canada, a lot of union members are voting differently than the union heads. And this is really going to highlight that, especially when it comes to the Alberta independence movement.
From Freedom Honey, it says, quote, so the commies want to fight, literally branding their commie activities with the commie fist. And it's a poster for Fight Back Now.
Yeah, so this is a union within Alberta, and they're really going against the Alberta independence movement. We're going to show a clip here in a moment, and it is absolutely shocking. Can you go back to that poster, though?
Oh, I just closed it.
Okay, but as you see, it has the commie fist on there. This is typical of a lot of NGOs, a lot of left-wing organizations. The fact that they're trying to fight against Alberta independence, I think this is a big help. It's so obvious what they are, especially in the rhetoric. Use stuff like this against them to shame them. Repost it on shows like this on your social media. This just shows that Canadian nationalists are backed by communists.
And that's the ultimate purpose. Also from Freedom Honey says, quote, unions and...
This is that exact same union giving a speech at their rally. We're going to see the imagery of that logo here once again.
Yeah, so they're organizing resistance rallies on May 29th to fight back against the UCP government and independence.
We're all fed up. It's time to fight back. And so while we respect the role of the opposition in the legislature, we're going to help them by mobilizing citizens outside of the legislature, because this province is ours, and the goal here is to take it back. Actually, right? So we actually had our convention in April, and at that convention we passed a number of resolutions unanimously. So we had one resolution that said that we would do everything, anything and everything we could to fight the push to separate. So we have a mandate from our members, a unanimous mandate from our members to fight against any initiative to pull Alberta out of Canada.
Pause it.
Especially.
So we're going to play the whole clip, so don't turn it off. Right there, he's stating anybody that is for Alberta independence, his organization is against. People are going to funnel money into organizations like this. This isn't the only organization we're going to profile. Later on in the show, we're going to show other NGOs. The federal government directly is funding into these NGOs, which should be illegal. Usually they have a go-between of somebody else that the federal government will give money to before they give it to organizations like this. But it's a mask-off moment here.
To fight against any effort to turn us into the 51st state. We also have, right now, there is a minority of what I would describe as extremists who are in the UCP government and in the UCP orbit, who are taking us down a road that Albertans just don't approve. They do not have our consent. So in moments like this, when our elected representatives and our elected government are ignoring the clear will of the people, that people have to stand up.
They're not ignoring the clear will of the people. They're doing a democratic process by voting.
Sorry if the volume is a little low on this clip. This is as loud as we can get it, and it's a very important clip. This was probably the most shocking clip of the day, and the resistance against Alberta independence is just ramping up with the cash flowing into organizations like this. You can see the black fist in the background, BLM. There's so many organizations that use that exact same logo. Are you choosing independence and freedom, or are you going to choose communism? And it's very funny that the federal government is going to fund organizations like this. They're funding direct communist resistance against independence and freedom. I don't think you could have a better compare and contrast here.
And as they have been for decades now.
What Fight Back Now is about. We are going to create a platform for ordinary citizens to speak out, push back, and demand better. That's what the day of action, the day of protest on May 29th is all about. We did not participate in the organization of any of those recall campaigns. However, we did encourage our members and our supporters to sign up, volunteer, and provide their signatures for the recall campaign. So yes, we're disappointed. And the message that we're trying to deliver with the Fight Back Now campaign, and the message that is going to be repeated, hopefully by thousands of people on May 29th as part of the province-wide day of protest, that message is pretty simple. This is a government that doesn't have the mandate to do many of the
And
things
pause it.
that they're doing.
It's time to fight back against Fight Back Now movement. And the Alberta Independence movement is going to be doing this. The Fringe is organizing a counter protest. I'll talk about it once this clip is done here.
And in the process of implementing a radical mandate that they weren't elected for, they are ignoring many of the things that Albertans really want us to deal with. Branded it a little bit. We said that we are going to help organize resistance rallies. That's what we call them. And that's what this is. We're calling it Fight Back Now because we think that that's the appropriate message in the moment. But coming out of our convention, we had a clear, and I would emphasize unanimous mandate to organize resistance rallies to push back against this government.
Okay. And just pause it, but leave it up there.
That's it.
Yeah, leave it up there if you can. Leave it up there. Thank you. Okay, so May 29th is this Fight Back Resistance rally, I believe. The Unacceptable Fringe is going to have a counter protest. We want to get as many people out to this thing to kind of dwarf these people, take over their protest, and make it an Alberta independence protest.
In a peaceful manner.
In a peaceful manner, yes. Also, bring petitioners out there. It's going to be a kind of a great time, and it's going to be great for content creators to go out to this thing and kind of interview both sides and possibly have debates on the spot. And I think a lot of these nationalists are going to be shamed. The Unacceptable Fringe is trying to get as many content creators, because this just came up, to kind of support a counter rally. As more information comes out about it, we will report on it. And on the 15th, a lot of people do come home. Blue collar workers from mines, from the oil patches and stuff like that. So
April 15th.
Yeah. Oh,
This
April
is May.
15th. So yeah, April, May. So, and the weather is going to be good by that time. So it should be easy.
But if they get the signatures in beforehand, before April 7th, then
you still need to counter protest this.
No, I know you need to kind of protest it, but that's why I say they maybe shouldn't try to get them in before April 7th.
No, it doesn't. The signatures don't even matter whatsoever. We cannot have huge protests like this that are going to go viral on social media. We need to counter protest and have a huge turnout for this thing.
I'd love to go, but to go film and stuff.
Well, just looking at him, I
We'll
mean,
probably get arrested on the
I don't think he's going to have so many supporters there. The question I'm going to have is, how many paid supporters are going to be there?
And by whom?
Yeah.
Can I move on? Okay. From Arizalaya, quote, wow, read the thread. I had no idea. Or read the thread. I had no idea. From the Reclaimer. One of these writings was decided by the number of people voting in foreign countries who are not subjected to the same identification requirements as citizens inside of Canada. Trudeau changed the laws to reduce foreign voting requirements, and Carney, should I click it?
No, you can leave it there. Okay. And I just want to kind of bring this up. There's a couple talking points here I want to bring up. Number one, Danielle Smith is bringing a lot of questions on this ballot about voting ID, stuff like this. Things she should be fixing well before the Alberta Independence movement, not putting it on a ballot before she takes action. The voter rolls, voter ID, everything, mail-in voting, all those questions need to be addressed well before the Alberta Independence vote. It's almost like she's trying to delay action on a lot of these things. And the second thing I kind of wanted to bring up was just voter interference and stuff like this. I think the federal government definitely wants to flood Alberta with a lot of immigrants at this point, especially before this vote.
Or foreign voters, just voting from outside of Canada, apparently now that they've been doing that for a while. So.
Yeah, so I mean, in the United States, they have poll watchers and stuff like that, although there was a lot of corruption in the last election. But voting and volunteering to actually do polls when the polls come up for voting is great for Albertans to do, especially if they support independence.
I thought you needed it back up. That's why I'm waiting for it.
No.
But this from Rebel News, quote, double standards for separatism. Elections Canada blocks Alberta first party registration. Elections Canada registers Quebec sovereignty parties without blinking. But when Albertans try to organize around sovereignty, the microscope comes out.
And you can stop there. She's going to go into it. And this is Sheila Gunn-Reid. She's been doing a fantastic job covering the Alberta independence movement, doing the rallies, writing a book about Quebec independence, what Alberta can learn from that, and how they can do it right. So she's been a big benefit to Alberta independence. And let's take a look.
Canada, you can start a political party dedicating to separating Quebec from the country. No problemo. You can start fringe climate parties. Also, no biggie. but try to start a sovereignty party in Alberta, suddenly Elections Canada becomes a real stickler for the technicalities. I want to give full credit to Blacklock's reporter for breaking the story, because without them digging through access to information records, we wouldn't even know this happened. And what happened should concern anyone who cares about fair elections and fair treatment in this country, inside and outside of Alberta. The chief electoral officer, Stéphane Perreault, refused to register the Alberta First Party, a pro-sovereignty party.
And we're going to play this whole clip because it is extremely important. There's a lot of interference coming into Alberta independence, and exactly the opposite is happening in Quebec, whether it's censorship or what happened here.
Even though they submitted 370 members. Now, the legal requirement, 250. So they're way, way over the threshold. But Elections Canada decided to verify the membership list. Fine. Except they did it by mailing out confirmation letters during the Canada Post strike. You can't make this stuff up. Only 129 confirmation letters came back. Why? Because a bunch of rural Albertans never even received the letters. I can attest to this. I'm still getting mail from when the postal strike was on.
There's one seat left.
Hey, pause it. Or sorry, fast forward it just a little bit.
Logistical problem of its fellow government agency, Canada Post, Elections Canada just disqualified the party. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Internal briefing notes admit that other parties have been registered without meeting the 250 member requirement. Stop Climate Change in 2019, the United Party in 2023. Elections Canada literally wrote that in, quote, rare circumstances, parties have become eligible without meeting the minimum membership.
Yeah, and a rare circumstance is a strike by Canada Post by definition. This is absolutely ridiculous. The interference that the federal government is literally having on every level. And we're just seeing the beginnings of all this stuff. We're just seeing the money start to flow in. We're just seeing the censorship start to ramp up. At a certain point, it's going to be full mask off. This is $1 trillion vote, and this will define the future of Canada. The federal government's going to do whatever they can do to stop Alberta independence.
Requirement. So let's get this straight. If you're a climate party, they're giving you flexibility. If you're some other sort of fringe party, also flexibility. But if you're an Alberta sovereignty party, suddenly we're splitting hairs over mail confirmations during a postal strike. Barry Nodal, the Alberta First Leader, says he felt they were being given a hard time. And it's hard to argue with that. And here's the bigger issue. Elections Canada registers Quebec sovereignty parties without even blinking an eye. Quebec can have parties explicitly devoted to advancing Quebec's interests, even separation, and that's treated as normal democratic expression, as it should be. But when Albertans try to organize around sovereignty, the old microscope comes out. Why is that? If federal institutions are neutral, they should be neutral both ways. If technical rules are rigid and universally enforced, that should be the case. Or if there's reasonable discretion, it should be applied evenly. What we appear to have here is discretion applied selectively. And that fuels the sovereignty movement in Alberta, doesn't it? Because that is one of the big issues. You cannot have a democracy where the referee seems to lean one direction, depending on who's on the ice. Because once people lose trust in the neutrality of Elections Canada, the damage is far bigger than one party's registration status. Again, full credit to Blacklock.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And thanks to Sheila, going to read to everything she's kind of been bringing the attention to with Alberta independence. I will say this: if we do have a counter protest against that, oh God, I can't even remember the name. Fight Back CA. Yeah, Fight Back CA. If there is a counter protest there, that's going to be a good opportunity to kind of interview people on the ground and say, well, do you agree with Alberta independence? And their answer is going to be no. And then ask them about Quebec. A compare and contrast will do wonders for Alberta independence when it comes to debate or question nationalists on this particular question. This is one of the big reasons I think a lot of these Quebec parties are also in cahoots with the federal government. The Independence Party that's coming to power in Quebec was promising an election about Quebec sovereignty within the year. Now they're saying by 2030. They don't want that question of Quebec independence coming at the same time as Alberta independence, because the federal government is absolutely going to treat the two issues with two different standards.
Should I read some comments? Because we do have quite a few.
I forgot about the comments. Sorry. We're going to get to them here.
Yeah. We'll get to the comments, and right after we'll talk about the very few discussions because they paused all debate on Bill C9, which is the censorship bill.
Yeah, so that was kind of the opening about the petition, what's going on with the petition. We're going to get into Alberta Independence news after that. We will read comments. We try to read all the comments. Sometimes we get overwhelmed, so we'll miss a few. That being said, if you're not subscribed, we're a very small channel. Every single subscription really helps. I've noticed our subscriber base has grown a little bit, and that's really helping the algorithm push out these lives to...
But also sharing, not just lives, but also edited videos. If there's a topic that you want to share, that really helps.
Well, yeah, it's very important to grow, especially our lives, because that's where we're putting out all the information to kind of help Alberta independence, whether it's a counter protest, whether it's what's going on with the petition, or whether it's crooked policies these politicians are trying to implement.
Yes, but Wild Rose Republic, I will call it's really long if I read it all out, says, I spent significant time in Vancouver. It's gotten incredibly bad in the Lower Mainland. I feel bad for sensible British Columbians, hence why we left. I mean, we saw the writing on the wall, literally and figuratively, and the feces on the wall as well, and all over the streets. 4 years ago? More now. 5 years ago, we saved up for 4 years, and then we left because we knew where it was going.
Yeah, we lived in downtown Vancouver. We lived in downtown Vancouver, and that being said, the point where they legalized all illicit drugs was just a absolute tipping point. That's when they really went off the cliff there. Now they're trying to slow roll that back, not all the way,
and they can't.
Somewhat. The damage is already done, and the litany of other policies the wokes have implemented on a legislative level in BC is crazy. The NDP is absolutely ruling the day when it comes to power through David Eby in BC. Northern BC doesn't agree with the policies, neither does the interior. It's just a damn shame what's going on with property rights, and that's going to absolutely hinder BC from ever getting its independence.
But even before that, housing costs, cost of living, the debt that BC has put itself into, I mean, it's unmanageable at this point, especially for this year. So yes, I mean, I feel bad for them too, and I do say, leave if you can. Steve Surfaro says, here's what they say. Yes, Albertans want independence and we support this. These petitions are astounding. This is in contrast with less sensationalism in the effort, far less sensational in the U.S. than the U.S.
Oh, it's good to see you again, Steve.
Yes. Hello, Steve. Thank you for being here. And Don Nidalak says, hope you can look into it. But that's the only message I got, so I'm not sure what you mean about looking into what. If you want, oh yes, if you, so we on our chats, both in the edited videos and here on lives, the only thing we block, because we do support and encourage free speech, is emojis. So any messages with emojis immediately get blocked, and links that you might put in the messages, because we used to get a lot of spam, even when we were a tiny little channel, just spam after spam of AI, I'm guessing, or bots just spamming with buy this and full of emojis, full of links. That's why we had to block those. So if you want to resend your message without the, if it had an emoji, then you can send it. Earl says, we are signing people on Tuesdays, noon to 4 in Yuma at the Las Quintas RV Resort East Side. Yuma, Arizona.
Yuma, Arizona, I believe, nice. Yeah.
Okay, so Yuma, Arizona from noon to 4 p.m. on Tuesdays. You can also go sign at Las Quintas RV Resort East.
Yeah, and thanks for saying that. We used to do a lot of geopolitics. We used to have quite a large American audience. So hopefully somebody heard that and will go out there. If you are from the United States and you're going to go to any location that has a petition, put it on your social media.
Or if you live in the United States, but you're Albertan.
Because there's not as many Albertans in these locations. So...
And Steve says the fraud in these petition signatures is astounding. That's what this couple that moved to the U.S. and mainland dual citizenship said. So apparently a couple told him that moved to the U.S. and maintained dual citizenship said that the fraud in the petition signatures is astounding.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of these petitions that go on. I know when RFK had to go each individual state when he was trying to run for president, he had to get a certain amount of signatures. The Democrats put in millions of dollars for counter signature movement. Yeah. So a lot of fake signatures were put on that petition, and it was undermining him overall. But he decided to go a different direction in the end, so it didn't really matter.
Well, he was kind of forced to.
But it really did shine a light on kind of how they try to undermine these petitions for signatures.
And Tal, hello Tal, thank you for being here. Says Earl, I've seen a lot of snowbirds in the US and Mexico on X gathering petition signatures.
Yeah, absolutely. If
we were Albertans, we'd be doing it as well. But
yeah, I wish we could have got a petitioner badge and done that here in Mexico City, because Mexico City, there are a lot of people from Canada in certain communities.
Yeah, I mean, we could do it for BC whenever that happens, because our address is still over there. Tal says, Nat and Guy, glad to see your sub count climbing. Thank you. And also, it's probably thanks to you as well, because thank you for sharing all our lives to your ex as well. And says, I shared your stream to X again.
Oh,
thank you so much. And Rich Dion says, signing events and efforts are accelerating. Check the Stay Free Alberta site for locations to answer the phone or the door. We are coming to you now. And yes, I always forget, but linked down below, the first link on our description of every live and every video is the link to stayfreealberta.com and the locations where you can go sign. It keeps updating, and also more information about the petition and how to sign if you think you're not able to get physically to one of those.
Well, and again, on the 7th, that might be the initial cutoff. We want to try to get 177,000 signatures by the 7th. It's crucially important. And that's why I feel a great responsibility with every live show that you're going to hear me repeat that over and over again, because that deadline is quickly coming up. Now, I will say this, Jeff Rath thinks they have no grounds to stop any further signatures. I absolutely hope is right. That's based upon precedent, because he did give examples of the same people trying to stop other petitions, which had no grounds to stand on. That being said, we don't want to take any risks.
Yeah, because especially now, they're probably trying to allow that to happen, even if there's precedent for it not happening.
Well, we're seeing a lot of judges in Canada just absolutely disregard the law and make rulings based upon ideology in the last few months. So if you get the wrong judge, who knows what might happen.
And Tal also says, we had a team Red Deer canvassers meet up on Sunday. It was good turnout and some networking was done. Telegram group is getting quite busy. Good. And I always say it's talking to each other, debating each other, even those that go and try to annoy you if they're not being like actually violent, just trying to engage them and have the conversation instead of continuing the polarization that those at the top, the elites, the federal government, and even the provincial government and the insane woke groups want to be there.
Yeah, and I hate saying his name, but thank you for our subscriber, that Big Daddy 1974, that did tell us about the 15th. A lot of people are coming back from these camp jobs and the weather is warming up. There's going to be a huge push at this time. That's why they're trying to derail it on the 7th, a week before that's going to happen. I think it's working against them as well, because it's starting to warm up right now, just enough for people to kind of flood a lot of these petition zones.
And be outside more too.
It's absolutely fantastic to see. It's a big transition, and I'm seeing on social media here, from desolate petition sites that are blizzard conditions to it's slightly warmed up and we have 100 people at the dog park with a bouncy castle.
Yes. And Rich Dion says, I'm collecting signatures, good, and says we are dedicated to an honest and strict collection process for Alberta independence, and that's what's important as well. And being able to not give excuses as to, oh, this cannot be verified, or all these signatures couldn't be verified, and being able to say, no, we did everything right, and if you're trying to interfere, then it becomes even more obvious when they do try to derail it.
Okay, we'll take 2 more comments and then we're going to get back into the stories. There are a ton of stories today.
Okay. Rosie Lab, hello, says,
One moment. If anybody does super chat, we will prioritize that and read that right away. We're going to try to read every comment though.
Yes. Rosie Leb, says, I went canvassing and every signature was legitimate. We had a nice lineup. Good. And again, if you haven't signed yet and you are going to sign, you do have to be an Alberta resident with 2 valid pieces of ID. I saw another comment that said that you could only have 1 if it was this certain type of, just bring 2, it's easier. And also proof of Alberta residence. And you can find more about that on stayfreealberta.com. And Tal says, FYI, you must be a Canadian citizen with an Alberta address for your signature to be valid. That's why I reiterated when you said, there's people down here in Mexico. Yes, but it can only be Albertans.
Yeah, but a lot of them are snowbirds that have vacation residence down here.
Just make sure that you have that Alberta residence.
And we're going to get back to comments in just a little bit, but we do have a ton of stories today. I'm not even sure if we're going to make it. We'll definitely make it through the Alberta section. The Canadian section is a lot of related stories to Alberta as usual.
And this is related to Alberta, but also a little bit more to just the national scenario that's going on and happening right now. We talked about the censorship bill C9 that would also censor certain religious speech, which is insane. But now the few discussions that can be had are moving forward fast because they do want to pass this by the end of this week, which is insane. But Trending Politics says Conservative MP Andrew Lawton, who has been talking about this a lot, accuses Liberals of censoring Bill C9 debate to silence free expression, faith groups, and civil liberties advocates raising alarms.
Yeah, and Andrew Lawton is absolutely fantastic. The fact that he's in politics now and he can bridge that gap between politics and social media and getting information out to the people.
And explaining things too.
He's one of the most critical assets that's actually in politics right now. And I will say this, this Bill C9 it's going to have a couple of priorities here with censorship. Alberta Independence is going to be priority, probably number 2. Priority number 1 is going to be a snap election. A snap election and try to absolutely rig what people can talk about online. They're going to get rid of memes, a lot of other things. We do cover a lot of geopolitics, and in the UK and the EU, we've already seen how they're decimating political topics over there.
And especially with the whole silencing religious texts and certain religious things, let's remember that they've already started to paint the Alberta Independence movement as a white Christian nationalist thing, which it is not. So again, they're finding the ways.
And now on Bill C9, when conservative members of the Justice Committee wanted to bring the testimony from people who are among the millions of Canadians of faith who will be directly affected by this, the Liberals have moved to the motion before us today to shut down debate. The Liberals are censoring debate on their censorship bill. The Liberals are denying us the opportunity to read letters from imams, pastors, rabbis, civil liberties advocates, individual Canadians who have been flooding members of Parliament's inboxes and voicemail boxes and phone lines with their concerns about Bill C9. The denunciation of Bill C9 has not come from some far-right conspiracy like some of the members in this chamber have alluded to today. It has come from the left and the right. It has come from the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, the Canadian Constitution Foundation, the Rabbinical Council of Toronto, the National Council of Canadian Muslims, the United Church of Canada, the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, the Primate of the Anglican Church of Canada, the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada, Egal Canada. We have groups representing almost every faith tradition in this country, civil liberties organizations, social justice organizations, all of whom believe that Bill C9 will harm the very groups the Liberals claim it will protect. And why this is so fundamental, I go back to my comments in my maiden speech that freedom of expression has always been and will always be my hill to die on. There's a line from James Madison that comes to...
And I will say this is probably one of the most critical issues, not just for Alberta Independence, but elections in general. This will effectively potentially consolidate their monopoly in Canada, that being the federal Liberal government. And they almost have that with the way the electoral system is set up. But now with censorship on top of that, and then the mainstream media kind of building a support behind that, it's going to be draconian what's going to happen. If we're wondering what's going to happen, it's not just religious speech that's going to be affected. It's primarily political speech that's going to be affected, because this is what we've seen in the EU, the UK, and Australia already. All three were able to bring in mass censorship bills. And then on the back of that, they brought in digital ID because they wanted online censorship.
And again, they fill their mouths with saying democracy, we're doing this to save democracy, to save discourse. There is a reason why the First Amendment is first, because without free speech, you cannot move forward within a society, and you cannot have the important knowledge and knowledge base to be an actual democracy and to have these democratic processes that they so want to safeguard, but they're actually destroying. But also the religious issue is concerning too.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of say this, not just our channel, but when I'm looking at a lot of Alberta Independence content, which I do 7 days a week because I'm gathering stories, there is a ton of small content creators. It really does help support the movement to try to subscribe anytime somebody's talking about this issue. They're not going to be able to censor them all. They may try, but if they do censor every single little creator, it's going to look absolutely insane to on an international stage. So
from Mark Nixon, quote, Liberals would never go after your religious freedom or freedom of expression. Then the Conservatives say, then why the F are you moving forward with Bill C9? Because we are going to go after your religious freedom and freedom of expression. That's essentially the only conversations they're having before they pass this thing.
And the reason they're doing this, Carney is currently going to hold the 3 by-elections where if he wins those 3 elections, he will have a majority government. If he loses one of those elections, he's either going to get a conservative to cross the aisle, or he's going to call a snap.
Which they do very often now.
Or he's going to call a snap election. If he calls a snap election, his polling numbers are higher than they've ever been, which is shocking to me. That being said, he's going to ensure that he can maintain that lead with a censorship bill like this.
You know, the reality is that there is no attack by this government on our faith communities. And you know what, Madam Speaker? Members of the opposition actually know that. But instead of reflecting reality, Madam Speaker, when we take a look at the amendment that was brought forward for a greater certainty, it provides assurances so that those faith communities can have a higher sense of being comfortable, in part because of misinformation that is constantly being pumped out by the Conservative Party of Canada. My question to the member is, does he not feel any obligation whatsoever, given that there was an election mandate on this issue in dealing with hate crime, that there is a responsibility of the official opposition to at least allow for debate to actually continue and come to an end so legislation can ultimately be passed by a majority?
Member for Brentford, Brent South Six Nations.
In typical liberal, hypocritical fashion, they're making statements. Canadians, faith leaders, you've got nothing to worry about once we remove this religious defense. It's been around for 50 years. We're going to take it away from you, but don't worry. Your charter rights are still protected. Where did we hear that before? We heard that during the invocation of the...
Yeah, and I don't like how the Conservatives are constantly focusing on the faith speech. Now, that needs to be pointed out, and that's going to cause a bit of an outrage. But by precedent, the speech that's important is the political speech, especially when you look at the UK, the EU. There's been elections in the EU that right-wing groups have not been allowed to talk about immigration because it was considered hate speech, so they had to take it off of their platform. We've already seen them try to censor Pierre Poilievre when it came. It was very strange how they did it. They said, you need a security clearance. But if he would have agreed to that, he would have had to censor himself probably on immigration and other sensitive matters.
Agencies Act, it was charter compliant. We heard that from the Prime Minister. We heard that from ministers. We heard it from David Lametti, who very arrogantly told Justice Rouleau, I'm not going to give you my legal opinion. You're just going to take my word for it that it was charter compliant. Well, you tell that to the Federal Court of Appeal and the Federal Court trial judge who came to a different conclusion. Canadians will not believe this Liberal government. And if they do, I've got a plot of swamp land you can build a dream house on in Florida. Thank you.
Well, and this is the issue. Canadians might not believe him today, and they might catch a lot of heat for this one little bill. But after they got this bill in effect, they have 2 more on the shelves. And once they have censorship completely mandated in Canada, the Canadians are going to believe whatever they tell them to believe outside of Alberta and Saskatchewan.
More than that already happens. Again, I mean, the mainstream media is just the narrative propaganda of whatever the federal government wants to push out because it's fully subsidized, basically, almost, by taxpayers, but by the federal government.
Well, I used to work at a bar doing security at nights. I always had a security job at night and then my day job, whether that was, man, it was horrible when I was working on the oil patch and then having to go back at nights to do security work. On every Friday I had to do a 24-hour shift. But I talked to a lot of people there, just like common people. Nobody knew anything about politics, and when they did, it was absolutely insane. They just ate up mainstream media slop. When I talk to people in the States or in Mexico, they know a little bit more about politics. Okay, you can go into the next story there.
Speaking of elections, from Marty Up North, quote, Carney just announced 3 by-elections. Funny enough, if he can't get his majority this way and with, he put flower, but with floor crossings, he'll call a general election in the fall. And we know what dates he'll probably try to do that before. So the new by-elections are Scarborough West, Terrebonne, and University Rosedale.
Well, just tell me the dates.
In Ontario. April 13th will be held.
And March 8th, right?
No, it was written on March 8th.
Oh, okay.
And they will be held on April 13th.
So this is going to be absolutely massive because if he gets this, he has the majority government. If he doesn't get it, he calls a snap election. If he gets held to a minority with a snap election, which based upon his poll numbers, I just don't see it happening. But if we hold him to a minority, maybe he just lets Alberta go so he can get a super majority there and take Canada into full-fledged socialism and communism. I mean, he's going to have multiple cracks at this apple. Eventually, he's going to get a majority government one way or another.
Because again, for some reason, his poll numbers are up.
Well, and another thing is...
And yes, polls are manipulated, but still.
If he wins 2 out of 3 of the snap elections, maybe he just pays another conservative to cross the aisle.
Allegedly. But from Alberta Secession says, quote, Finance Minister Nate Horner has been floating the notion of imposing a sales tax on Albertans. The response from citizens to this concept should be nothing less than outrage.
Yeah, this is absolutely insane. One of the big benefits about being an Albertan is no sales tax. BC has massive sales tax, PST, GST. I mean, you name it. They just want to keep adding more. Than they want to add surge pricing in grocery stores. It's insane. I used to work for a couple bars. I won't say who, but they used to get their alcohol from Alberta and sneak it back into BC just to avoid tax.
I didn't know that.
A lot of bars do that in BC.
Because, again, it is insane. But from Western Standard, quote, Alberta Francophone group fighting against independence has received over...
I wanted to stay on that story. That's fine. We'll move on to this story, but then we'll do comments after this.
Okay.
So if you do have comments, put them in now.
From Western Standard, quote, Alberta Francophone group fighting against independence has received over $20 million in taxpayer funding.
Again,
Surprise.
$20 million is quite a lot to, especially this early on in Alberta independence, especially when we don't even have the 177,000 signatures. How much money are they going to pump into this thing?
And have they already, that hasn't been disclosed or discovered?
Through these third-party groups, through these NGOs, and through individuals.
Unions.
Through First Nations as well. You have to believe it's already being pumped into First Nations. That's why they're trying to derail it through them right now. This is absolutely disgusting what's going on. We've seen what happened with the fightback.ca earlier on in the show. That was absolutely crazy. They're already funneling money into counter movements here.
But now I'll read your comments. Teresa, hello, says, in Calgary, a permanent signing station at Bottoms Up Pub in the southeast, I guess, Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Friday, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay, one moment. Let's restate the name of that pub because a lot of small businesses do not like Alberta Independence. So if a business does support Alberta Independence, it's important to point them out so people support them as a business.
So Calgary, permanent signing location at Bottoms Up or BUDDOMS UP Pub in the southeast, Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Friday, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay, perfect. And hopefully that's inside the pub because that means they do support it. She might have been outside though.
And Dawn says, I posted, thank you so much for acknowledging my last post. We might have saved a lot of petition votes from being disqualified. I'd like an answer. And again, it goes, an answer to a question I have never heard asked. On October 19th, the referendum will have 10 questions on it, and the independence question will be one of them. Can one only answer the independence question? I don't know.
Well, and that's what I was wondering. That's what I was saying. Sometimes, sometimes on voting ballots, if you don't answer everything, it can be disqualified. It's going to be interesting what happens.
I'll look into it.
Also, it's going to be important as this vote gets closer. We're going to need to find out the rules and regulations. Does it have to be filled out in pencil or pen? Because if pollsters are kind of against Alberta independence, they may just, say we ran out of pencil, so we used a pen, and then that disqualifies all the votes. There's going to be all kinds of underhanded tricks
shenanigans
that are going to happen. So as it gets closer, I'm going to be more secure about what are the rules. You can continue.
Sorry, I was trying to read which one was the next one. Harmony says, I'm so impressed with your guy. Oh, that guy, I guess. He has so many rich experiences, hardworking, and a wonderful man.
Oh, thank you.
My man.
Yeah, you can get. Although when we tried to watch a scary movie with you last night,
you tried to watch a movie.
She just wants to be on her phone playing a video game.
Well, no, I was editing for the video today. Teresa says it is inside the pub and they are great supporters.
Fantastic. And again, if any small business is a supporter of Alberta independence, even if there's not going to be a petition there, put it in our comments and we'll give them a shout out, because a lot of businesses are scared, even if they support Alberta independence, to say they support Alberta independence. This is the first business that come to our attention that's outrightly supporting it. So if you live in that area, support that pub.
And with locations and stuff, I mean, I'll try to grab these comments afterwards from the live and make a list in a comment under this live of all the locations that people have mentioned, because now I've seen quite a few locations mentioned, so might as well try to do that.
On the Alberta Independence website, all that's taken care of.
Yeah.
So,
but just because they sent it here.
Okay.
Too. And thank you so much for the $5 super chat, Teresa, and said again, it is inside the pub and they are great supporters. And I think it is great that they're letting people go in. And as we just saw on the rules, it is good. What? Why are you smiling?
Because I'll tell you after.
Okay.
My mother's name was Teresa.
Yes.
My mother's name was Teresa, and then she like, Teresa said a $5 super chat. I was like, oh, my mom said a $5 super chat.
Okay, got it.
My mother passed away, so a long time ago.
Yes, but okay, what was I saying? That was cute. As I was saying, it is great that they're letting, because as we just read in the regulations that Marty posted, or the suggestions Marty posted, you can be inside of businesses if they allow you to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great that they're letting people in. And again, I've also seen a lot of, and I hate using this word, but misinformation by people that want to derail the signing in the petition by saying, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then people trying to debunk that and say, no, here's what you can actually do, here's what you can't actually do.
Yeah.
So it is important to stay on top of that. And I do try to retweet it or at least restate it every time I see those corrections.
And I will say this, it's been brought to our attention that you can't take donuts or coffee or any kind of foods.
And I corrected it on that live when we said it.
From anybody that's kind of supporting. That being said, if it is happening, don't put it on film. I have seen a couple of videos where that happened, and it's a great strategy, but don't put that on social media because
it could be seen as a bribe.
It could be seen as a bribe and used against the independence movement in court later on.
Yeah.
So if you
either way.
if you have posted a video like that, maybe take it down. Yeah. I've seen a couple.
Okay, but thank you so much for your comments and for the super chat, and let's continue.
Okay. And are we caught up on comments?
Yes, that's why I said let's continue. From Ryan Gertis, then quote, oh look, the media is priming the public for more government control over people's lives. I don't need the government to parent my children. It's time for parents to take some responsibility over what their children are doing. I pay attention in my household, ask questions, inform my children, and I always make sure they can come to me whenever they have questions about anything. Because, from CTV News, social media ban for kids under consideration in online harms bill. And this is how they always do it. It's either women and children or women and children that need to be protected from the online world. And that's how they continue to pass even more censorship bills, laws, etc.
Yeah, they create a specialty group, then they bring in censorship bills, and then they always stack on top of that a digital ID. And you need to have a digital ID because we need to stop under 16. It's usually under 16, especially in Australia, the UK right now. But then everybody has to have that digital ID. Otherwise, the system's no longer going to work. And that's how they've smuggled in digital ID and actually having to use that digital ID to log in online.
But this is also how they try to remove, especially with children's parental rights, which British Columbia and a lot of other provinces within Canada have already tried to do anyways. But this is another step into saying, no, the government knows what's best for your children. The school knows what's best for your children. You are just a friend and a mentor, but you're not a parent, essentially. That was an opinion stated by a court in a case regarding transgender child, which I don't think exists, but a child who was being confused by his mother and his teacher, her mother and her teachers. And then the court came back and said, oh, you can be a friend and a mentor, but you cannot essentially parent your children. You have no authority to parent your children. The government will parent.
Yeah, they're absolutely stripping parental rights across Canada. I'll get into a story in just a moment, but this is why Alberta Independence is crucially important to kind of hold back this government parenting, which they want to take control of your kids, make sure you have to work two or three jobs and both parents have to work, so you're never home for the kid and you can't actually raise your child with proper morals and values. There was and
aside from the fact that they've made it impossible to even try to have a family in the first place.
Yeah. There was a gentleman when we were living in Vancouver that had his kid taken because he didn't use the correct pronouns. Absolutely crazy. This is also going on in the United States. The only way for Alberta to really stop this, especially as they start taking provincial autonomy away so they can federalize Canada, is going to be Alberta independence. If you don't stand up now, that little autonomy Alberta does have is going to be stripped, just like they're trying to strip the rest of the provinces.
And once you start saying, oh, I wish I had stood up back then, it'll be too late.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a rare opportunity. There is so much
to make a country. Like, how often can you get to do that?
There's so much momentum behind this thing right now. It can actually happen.
Mm-hmm. Don't let them say that it can't. From Jasmine Lane, quote, Danielle Smith calls out her NDP opposition when it comes to the separation movement in Alberta. So, interesting.
We're getting back to the way the country was always meant to work. So my work doesn't get delayed by months. It's started several months ago and it's going to continue day after day.
So does that mean you're hoping that we don't get to a place where there is that question put to the people, whether or not they want to stay in Canada?
I trust Albertans, and it'll be up to Albertans to decide that. There's a petition campaign going on right now. They've got 2 more months to collect signatures, and I don't want to prejudge it, nor do I want to underestimate how seriously harmed Albertans are and how disappointed they've been in the way they've been treated by the Canadian government. So that's why I'm not demonizing anyone who is expressing legitimate grievances. My job is to identify them and to resolve them so that we can give people hope. Now, the package of proposals that we have in the MOU is only one thing we have to address. We've got to address issues that emerged because of out-of-control immigration policy at the federal level. The gun grab is another area of grievance. So as I say, I'm glad that we're making some progress with the federal government in this area. I think it's important, but there's still a lot more things that we have to do to address some of the legitimate concerns that Albertans have.
But I just want to come back to that question, though, because in the event that there is a referendum, there will be people that will be...
This is CTV, so I want to make sure we didn't get dinged there. But I'm going to judge Danielle Smith based upon her actions, not her rhetoric. And a lot of her actions, we're going to see how they end up working out. But if they do undermine Alberta independence, I'm not going to like it at all. And I already don't like how she's flooding this petition with a lot of questions. A lot of people don't.
Leading the side to leave, and there'll be people who will be leading the side to stay. Are you saying that you would not want to lead that side in favor of staying within Canada?
Like I said, I'm already leading it. And those who want to wait for another few months to do what I'm doing, I would say to get off their duffs and to start making those positions known now. That my opposition leader, who's NDP, he should be calling the NDP leader in British Columbia, saying don't stand in the way of getting a pipeline bill. He should be calling Avi Lewis, who keeps on talking about leaving oil and gas in the ground and phasing it out altogether. I'm telling you, those are the kind of things that are destructive to national unity. And so if anybody wants to help with the cause of national unity, then we should all get on board. Let's find a way to work together. Let's find a way to get our products to market, and let's stop talking down our most important and vital industry in the country that not only benefits us but benefits all of Canada. So that's what I would say is that I've already been advocating.
Yeah, and Alberta independence is the way to go. It's too late for national unity. And I will say this, there's definitely a game plan emerging between Danielle Smith, Pierre Poilievre, Jason Kenney, who we just did a video on, and a lot of the other big national figures that are trying to put a plan together against Alberta independence, and that plan is all based around economics. They're going to throw a goodie bag of pipelines, natural resource contracts, you name it economically. If this Alberta independence thing gets too far along, they're going to try to throw everything economically at them. And that's why they want to form the argument around economics. That's not the only problem. I wouldn't even say that's the biggest issue. That's the biggest issue to convince Albertans to vote for independence, but all the cultural issues and the direction Canada is going and all the things they've done over the last 10 to 15 years is the reason we should be voting for independence. It's time to form a new nation, take control of your own destiny, and separate from this crazy woke liberal government that wants to drive Canada off a cliff, not just economically, but culturally as well.
Yeah, the communists and tying it to China, the loss of a bunch of rights, not just, for example, parental, which are very important, and the lack of having an opportunity to live a life, try to have any kind of life, especially if you're young. And again, I do see Danielle Smith, she's a federal politician. At the end of the day, she has to continue to state her intentions of being within Canada because otherwise she's out of a job, essentially, or at least for the time being. Yeah. So I'm not excusing it, but at the same time, yes, she got this kind of moving, at least opening the door for the referendum, but you can't rely on her anymore because her intentions will always continue to be having to stay and having a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada.
Yeah, but
And Canada is done.
There is no excuse. She's a national politician. That's why you have to look very precisely at every single action she does or any of these other national politicians do, especially when Danielle Smith, because she's somebody that's trying to walk both sides. She'll come out and say she's on the national side, but she's the most, she knows she needs independence voters to win in Alberta. So she's in a position to really undermine the movement with a lot of her actions, and flooding this petition with a lot of questions was the first of a lot of those actions. So I'm going to continue to watch her, and I'm going to shine a light when she does something I'm a little bit skeptical of.
And again, all of these politicians will continue to say, like Pierre, Danielle, etc., yes, we're going to try to give Albertans and hear Albertans' grievances and have the federal government help with pipelines or help with further production and furthering infrastructure. But that's all they can do when we're still working within a Canadian framework. The problem is Canada is being within Canada. It's not everything else, and it's not just economic. It's everything that has been done, and Alberta has the opportunity to move away from it.
Well, it's also the rigging of the political system and the electoral system within Canada, that they're not going to give that up. They have a monopoly there, and it's going to continue to be a monopoly. That little goodie bags of natural resource contracts they're going to give you if this independence movement gets too far, that's more beneficial to Canada than it's going to be Alberta, because they're going to take even more remittance payments away. Okay, let's go into some comments if we can.
Okay.
If we have any.
Yes. Wild Rose says the gun grab, that's a third rail. Another one as well. And again, the removal of rights and the persecuting of the people that are the most law-abiding and that are the ones that pay the taxes and further life within Canada. Those are the ones they're going after, while they continue to try to help asylum seekers not face deportation, for example, for crimes that they did, or helping further the homeless population. It's everything they're trying to support goes against whoever is a law-abiding tax-paying Canadian, Albertan in this case.
You should really be taking a look at British Columbia. That is your closest neighbor. Look what's going on there with property rights. There are going to be no more property rights in British Columbia really soon. It's going to be, everything's going to be put on a 99-year lease where you're paying taxes to First Nations tribe. This is the Chinese model. You're not allowed to own property in China. You're only allowed to lease it for 99 years. This is the model they're trying to bring in. This is already the model they have on a lot of Indigenous lands for non-Indigenous people that want to buy property there.
And they're saying, oh no, it's not happening. That's not going to happen. They're not going to start taxing people. Don't worry about it. But more and more lawyers within BC and that work with First Nations or have just solely worked within First Nations have come out and continue to come out and saying this is actually worrying, and the people that are trying to tell you not to be worried should be shutting up right about now. And we will show a few interviews that have come out that are important on this topic.
You were right a couple of days ago, but the narrative has now changed. It's no longer, no, this is not going to happen. This is, it's happening and it's a good thing. I was just watching mainstream media. I think it was CTV again. And I was absolutely shocked when they were talking about this, the framing of this. Oh yeah, it's happening. It's been happening. Everything is headed in that direction and it's a good thing. This is reconciliation. Then they think they already have acceptance from the brainwashed BC sheep that they can now push this narrative that this is a good thing, that private property rights are no longer going to exist. As soon as it's pushed through in BC, it's going to go across the rest of Canada. They're definitely going to push it in Alberta. If you don't vote for independence now, if your property gets taken, we've been forewarned.
And that's how the narrative cycle always works, also within just mainstream media in general, not just in Canada. But it's you're a conspiracy theorist and a bigot if you notice what's happening and if you talk about what's happening. Then it goes to, no, it's not happening, shut up. Then it goes to, well, it's happening and it might be a good thing. Then it goes to, it's actually happening and it's a good thing because of XYZ. And then it goes to, if you don't accept that it's happening, then you're a racist, bigot, etc. So that's how the narrative cycle always functions.
Yeah, the United States is breaking out of this name calling and putting labels on people is no longer working in American politics. And that's why you see this populist rise of conservatism there. In Canada, this name calling and these putting labels on people still seems to be working.
Mm-hmm. because they accepted. Canadian Spider-Man Hello says, hello and good day, Nat and the guy. Thank you for being here. And now they're just saying hello to each other. And CCHE says, a whole damn generation of Canadians gone because their kids don't want to have kids due to the federal government's failures and the cost of living. Then that will be generational and affect the Canadian pension plan. More than if I've been diving deep into the whole Canadian pension plan issue and the whole Canadian pension plan investment group or corporation that exists. It's insane how terribly managed the Canadian pension plan actually is and how much better Albertans would do by not having to be within that system, because they've lost a bunch of your money and haven't even told you through terrible investments and through managed investing instead of letting it just grow and accrue as it could be.
Your pensions are at risk.
Since 2006.
Your pensions are at risk with the Canadian government. If you can break free, even if you don't get as much that you put into the pension fund back, the Albertan government will be able to reimburse the difference, number one, because there's so much natural resources within Alberta. But, oh God, I was going somewhere with that. Oh, you're going to have complete control over the fund. So you can have a secure fund now. You can actually invest that fund in Alberta. So Alberta will become even stronger.
But I mean, and I do agree, the population collapse has already been happening for the past, 30, 40 years within Western nations, but it's accelerated even more. The few people that do have kids want to take them outside of Canada, the ones that have enough money to do so, and the want a future for their children. As we're seeing more and more Canadians that have deep roots within Canada leave, Alberta has a chance not to do that, not to go down that path. But exactly, who's going to continue to pay the immigrants? Who's going to continue to pay into the Canadian pension plan? Well, those low-skill, low-wage immigrants that they have to import more and more of, while the young people don't see a future, so they either don't have kids or leave.
No, they don't. And this is the thing. Canada's plan by 2030, every single person that's replaced is not by birth rate anymore. It's going to be by immigration. That's what's come out. If Alberta separates, it's time to say, no, we're going to hold off on immigration. If we are going to let immigrants in, it's going to be people that are culturally similar to us that will integrate and have
and high skills
and have the Albertan identity. So we have a group identity there that we're all driving towards the same thing. And if we can't replace our population based upon our birth rates, well, we're going to have to figure it out. Mass immigration is not the solution, especially from countries that want to see the worst for you.
But also high skilled and people that actually contribute into the economy, into the culture, into the country, which that has not happened for the longest time. But I also think it would be important for Alberta to start some sort of plan to incentivize and to create the necessary conditions for young people to want to have families, to be able to have those families. There's a lot of young kids that do want, not kids, a lot of young Canadians that do want to have children but can't. And that what's stopping them is the conditions created by their own government. And if they haven't noticed that, it's about time they notice that by the time they reach 30, 40, 50, and it becomes even more impossible to have children, it'll be too late to try to change anything.
Well, yeah, and you can just look at other nations that are actually starting to turn the birth rate around. Hungary is one of them. They're putting a ton of tax incentives. If you have, I believe it's 3 or more kids, then once you hit that third kid, you pay no taxes ever, because those kids are eventually going to pay taxes, and that's going to pay forward into the system. So they're not losing a lot of tax revenue. They're getting intergenerational tax revenue, stuff like this. But also Alberta has a lot of natural resource sector taxes coming in. So getting rid of all taxes on all citizens is actually a possibility. A lot of other oil-rich countries have already done this.
And aside from the ideological component too of feminism, yesterday we had Women's Day, which is ridiculously named and ridiculously implemented.
We went to the park and my God.
Well, we were going to go to film here in Mexico City. Well, we live close to Mexico City, but going to Mexico City to be able to film and interview people at the Women's March for the Spanish channel, but you twisted your ankle last weekend, so we couldn't go. But it is insane that also that ideological component that has told so many young women that no, they shouldn't have children, they have to go work, and then created the conditions where it becomes essentially impossible for women not to have to work and for there to be a one-income household and be able to survive on that. So it's a compounding effect. It's not just one thing. It's not just, young people don't want to have kids because it's not fashionable or there's no money. It's everything. Sorry, Canadian Spider-Man says, so glad I don't own property here in BC. Panama, Costa Rica, Alberta are a better choice. I was looking into, I heard someone explaining something about Panama that was interesting, that they have some sort of tax and deduction scheme for people that immigrate to Panama but are pensioners, and they're able to have discounts on their electricity bills, for example, and a bunch of other different discounts and incentives to get pensioners to move to Panama. So that was, and there's a lot of Canadians moving to Panama.
Pensioners are good for an economy because they tend to start small businesses, especially if they have a little bit of retirement so they can get a regular income coming in. That's usually good for the economy. But I've been talking to a lot of people here in Mexico and even back home in BC, and the ones that bought property are freaked out. This is all of a sudden the most important issue. I've been talking about this for freaking years. This happened on the Sunshine Coast long before it happened in Richmond, long before it happened in downtown. It happened along the coast and in northern BC as well. This has been happening a lot. But now that it happened in Vancouver, everybody's paying attention. It's because they're going to put a mass push for this stuff. And people here in Mexico that were thinking about buying property up there are like, thank God we did not buy property. And that's what it's going to... the housing market within BC is absolutely going to collapse because mortgages are not going to be approved by banks, and there's going to be nobody to buy the houses that are on the markets because nobody's going to want to buy a house in an uncertain market like what's going on in BC right now.
And banks are already freaking out too, and they've already discovered that banks were also doing some weird shenanigans when it comes to mortgages and lending. So,
well, Alberta Independence is picking up a ton of steam, and they're realizing BC probably has more money than even Alberta if you look at its natural resources, yet it's been undeveloped because of all the woke policies.
And the debt is insane.
Because of the woke policies and regulations. So what they're making sure doesn't happen to BC is they can't go for independence like Alberta is doing. That's why they're trying to divide it up between all these tribes. So there's too many conflicting interests to ever get independence in BC.
Wild Rose says, Alberta and abroad is the only places I'll own land. And I support that.
It's great for Alberta if it gets its independence to own land, but if certain precedents are set in BC and then contracts are renegotiated with First Nations tribes in Canada, I don't think any of Canada will be safe to own property in if Alberta doesn't get its independence.
And Canadian Spider-Man says, things are good, getting lots done in preparation to move to Alberta. Nice.
Fantastic.
Get in before and maybe help with all the things. Wild Rose says, my uncle had his last daughter at age 73, so there's hope out there, gentlemen. There's not so much hope for women, and that's why I continuously say both here and in my Spanish channel, a lot of women don't even know that their fertility rate and their chances of conceiving go like in free fall at age 26. A lot of people think it's at 35, 40. No, by then your chances are greatly diminished, and each year as it passes, they diminish even more. So to young women out there who are in their 20s and think, oh, I have all this time. No, you don't. No, you don't. When you hit 26 is when it sharply declines, and nobody wants to say it.
Well, talking about Spider-Man's comment there, going back to the previous comments, he's moving to Alberta. And I know when we were going to move to Mexico, we were considering Alberta before, but there was no independence movement. But I talked to a lot of people that were thinking about leaving the country, and a lot of them did end up leaving the country. The Alberta independence movement wasn't strong at that time. And now that it is strong, a lot of people are looking to relocate because Alberta is their last hope in Canada, and they don't want to leave Canada.
But don't take your woke shit with you. Don't vote the same way you voted in BC.
And they're not. They're moving to Alberta for a specific reason, because they want independence, because they want what the Canadian identity used to be before it went off a woke ledge.
Because for some insane reason in the United States, we're seeing that Texas is turning Democrat, and now California is turning Republican. So everything's going crazy because of these movements recently that we've seen between states. So just don't do that over there. Canadian Spider-Man says, Panama and Costa Rica have a better quality of life and happiness in general from what I saw there. People are just happier closer to the equator. And I think that's just statistically true. Like they've made studies about that.
Well, the governments get far more authoritarian the colder the weather. And I guess because it's more dangerous in cold weather, it's life or death if you're living on the streets.
I guess.
Yeah.
There are a lot of authoritarian and I mean, dictatorships down over here as well.
Yeah.
But
okay, let's do one more comment.
Canadian Spider-Man says, Melak in Jalisco, in Jalisco, I don't even know where that is. Melake in Jalisco is another great place to live in Western Mexico with lots of Canadians there too. And yes, in Jalisco, especially in the state of Jalisco here in Mexico, there are a lot of expats, and there's whole Canadian and American enclaves of
Well, isn't that the gay
pensioners.
district as well?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's
Well-
Monterrey.
Oh, Monterrey. Okay.
Parts of Monterrey and Guadalajara, parts of Guadalajara too. But we were talking about First Nations. We'll go back into the stories now. We were talking about First Nations, and this is all down there in the fringe, not me, so don't come at me. Derek Smith says, quote, if 6.8 of Alberta's population can halt a democratic process, then obviously they're powerful enough to fend for themselves. Between this and BC, they're not making a strong case for us to treat them with respect. They're starting a civil war. And this is because Frank Buckshot said, quote, a big shout out to the corrupted chiefs of the Alberta Indian bands. The Stay Free Alberta teams were working hard to push our cause and seeking ways to motivate forces. You just did it for us. Thank you. All efforts have now been doubled due to the risk of that the Liberal blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
won't let it
and I
happen.
will say this. I think it's the chiefs of the band that have been corrupt for a long time and work hand in hand with the federal Liberal government. And it's obvious here that they're trying to derail this movement on the specific date before the 15th. They want to do it on the 7th. This is no accident. And the federal government wants deniability, so they want to do it through these First Nations bands. This is important. I mean, when you're going to found the nation of Alberta, you really got to figure out, you don't want specialty groups in a new Alberta. That doesn't mean you don't want First Nations. What that means, you don't want them to have special status. If their rights, if First Nation rights are here and Albertans' rights are here, you don't need to take First Nations rights away. You need to bring Albertans' rights here so everybody's equal under the letter of the law. This stops any problems from happening in the future with specialty groups and specialty classes. This is happening in Central America, South America, Europe right now. This is ripping apart nations. The UN has implemented a lot of laws for Indigenous people or First Nations that they're trying to bring into a lot of these countries to get rid of private property rights. It's not just happening in BC. So when you found the nation of Alberta, you're really going to want to get rid of any specialty groups unless you want massive problems in the future.
And also all of this talk and the way it is being framed and the way it's being framed around feelings, sorry to put it that way, but being framed around feelings and about morality, but it's a false morality, and around suicidal empathy, that has to stop. And the issues have to be looked at with a very dry way, so they cannot continue to use just feelings and emotions to pass through and continue with this kind of insane legislation. And that is a problem that I did see a lot in Canada and by the lemmings that are just consuming mainstream media, is that they're guided fully by the feelings that they're told to have, not even by their own feelings, but by the narrative that has been built through years and years of land acknowledgements and of painting certain issues under a light where you can only see it through emotions.
Well, I will say this. There's a lot of dual loyalties that people are with First Nations as well as nationalists or First Nations and the Alberta Independence movement. You really got to keep a close eye when there's dual loyalties here. There's a lot of shifty moves going on behind the scenes.
And a lot of people that end up benefiting and that will never come out and say that they benefited, but they did.
Okay, let's continue on
From
here.
Mark Nixon, quote, insanity. David Eby, Premier of BC, says giving away nearly $1 trillion in private property value will unlock $50 billion in projects. That's his math. Destroy the foundation of home ownership for a couple of dollars for developments. You don't create certainty by detonating the housing market.
This isn't just the housing market. You're getting rid of private property rights, basically, because what happened in Vancouver, 95% of the land within British Columbia has some kind of land claim on it, just waiting to be recognized. If he gets rid of all private property rights, for $50 billion in projects? That's ridiculous.
And again, the debt in BC has skyrocketed in the past 5 years.
There's clearly a difference between this side of the house and that side of the house in terms of what we understand our legal obligations are in relation to working with First Nations people. The member who asked me a question is a leadership candidate. The current leader of the Conservatives has been clear on the record. He says, quote, I fully support reconciliation. You're either on the team or you're not. I'm on the team, and I'm focused on what we need to be focused on. I'm clear in terms of my position. Our government believes that this is core to the economic success of our province. Agreements with First Nations, including with Musqueam and others, pave the way for the $50 billion in final investment decisions that are coming forward just this year, and the $200 billion in final investment decisions that we are targeting over the next 10 years. With uncertainty, those projects will not move ahead. So if the member wants to govern this province, he says he does, wants to be the leader, does he support this work? We support the work. I attended as a witness. I was honored to attend. I support the federal government's work on this. I've reviewed the agreements. It is what the federal government needs to be doing. Does he agree with that?
And did you hear what he said? This financially benefits the government. This financially benefits the government. It does not benefit the citizen. This financially bankrupts or not every single, but almost every single citizen within BC, and it changes the paradigm of what it is to be a citizen. You're now going to be a serf, but the federal government needs the $50 billion in contracts so everybody can lose their private property rights, and then we're going to bring that precedent across Canada. This is the model Mark Carney wants to have.
Mm-hmm. And also, not only does it not benefit citizens, but it also shows the lie that was told to so many people that, oh, invest in real estate and your house will grow in value, and then you'll be able to sell it and have this much money, and then you'll have so much money already invested in your house that just opens the doors for you. Oh, I left. I disappeared.
Why don't you go into the next story?
Okay, I'll read your questions while he fixes my camera. Canadian Spider-Man says, I'm coming to sign the petition before May. Good. And then Joe Rush says, I'm lucky, already live in Alberta. Woohoo. Good. And yes, okay, I think that would be, it is considered lucky, I think.
Read that question again.
It wasn't a question. It's just Joe Rush saying, I'm lucky, already live in Alberta. Yes, you are. But again, as I was trying to say before my camera died, now I forgot.
Okay, let's go with 2 more questions, then we'll go back to the stories. We do have a ton of stories today, so.
I did have another thing to say about that, though.
Well, eventually it will come back to you.
Wild Rose says, Treaties 6 and 7 in Alberta clearly state that Aboriginals have ceded all land in perpetuity.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. I'm a little bit concerned right now. It's great that they ceded all land. This is what's giving Alberta a firm path towards independence with as little hurdles in the way as possible. The problem with that, the federal government definitely has a game plan, and I think it's the BC model that they want to bring in. And it wouldn't put it past First Nations to say, well, we signed those original treaties under duress. Mm-hmm. And then the federal government coming in and say, okay, well, we're going to renegotiate this. That's going to take quite some time to do. And Alberta independence is going to come first. And that's why it's so important to get independence now before stuff like that comes into effect. You have such an ideological captured government and court system that stuff like that can happen, even though it's obvious all the land has been ceded. And this is what's helping the Alberta independence model go forward. It's not guaranteed. That's how it's going to be permanently in the future.
And I did promise to KP for you to read the RUMBLE comments. We're also streaming on rumble.com. So if you have any comments censored by YouTube, you can go over there and I'll read them. I can't bring them up because the software doesn't work.
If you're not subscribed on YouTube or RUMBLE, please subscribe. It does help us to grow. And I have noticed our audience growing, and that is helping push these lives out. And every single
videos.
And every single live, there's very important information about these petitions and kind of what's going on in the Alberta independence movement.
So KP4U says, yes, finally found you two on Rumble. And again, we have the same username, channel name on RUMBLE. And also says, well said, thank you. It says, it's not just about the money, it's about control and power. If we could have been in charge of our own resources, we would have definitely kept pace with the US and very possible have surpassed them.
Yeah,
exactly.
Most definitely.
I remember what I was going to say, but it's mean.
Well, go ahead.
Well, about First Nations and reconciliation and etc. Because I didn't grow up in Canada and I didn't grow up with the narrative, and I just came into it when the narrative was already like well cooked and oiled up and being used. And again, I came into Canada right as land acknowledgement started being a thing. When is reconciliation done? Like, when is the ending point? When are people going to, just in general, Canadians say, okay, it's been settled, it's been done. It's continuously, and it keeps getting used, and it keeps getting increased by those that have serious interest by using it to further control the population.
Most Canadians don't realize this isn't a Canadian issue. This is a globalist issue. First Nations was always the specialty group that they were going to use to take away private property rights and all kinds of other rights globally. The UN has implemented these laws. They've already been adopted by UCBC, but also Chile and dozens of other countries around the world. This model is being used around the world globally. A lot of people just don't realize this. Canadians have been propagandized to such an extreme, even more than a lot of these other countries, that they're going to be very willing to accept this. This is why it's very important if Alberta does get independence, it needs to really not have any specialty groups, especially not First Nations. And that doesn't mean take First Nations rights away. It means bring Albertans' rights up to the same level so everybody's considered equal under the letter of the law. This is the game plan globally. I can't say it more than enough. People just don't believe me in Canada when I say the UN has implemented these laws. These are the international standards. They're bringing them to a lot of other countries, but a lot of other countries will violently resist this, especially in Central and South America. They need to set the precedent in a cooperative country, which would be Canada.
Because of again, as an outsider, when I came in, I found it kind of insane that there was this whole other way of seeing things and how things happened. And I saw that it was through the propaganda and the propaganda machine that continues to ramp up, and the censorship around what you can and cannot say, and the self-censorship of people that don't want to discuss this issue and face it and say, okay, when are we going to be done? Because there's no end point.
It's never going to be done because this isn't an organic single issue that's coming up. This was just kind of how Mark Carney was the architect of the Green Industrial Complex, which was supposed to be the New World economy. First Nations was supposed to be the specialty group. They're going to take all property rights away from citizens in the Western world, and they're going to do it through the UN. The UN is working hand in hand with First Nations, the federal government, and provincial governments. And what they want to do is have multiple First Nations have the same land claim on the same land. As many levels of government they can put on top of one another makes it extremely hard for one individual to claim private property rights. Okay, we made a video on that. It's in our video section. It's called Land Grabs BC Alberta.
The one that came out today, I believe.
I highly recommend it.
Yes.
Okay, let's get back into it.
From Jade, quote, energy reality check. Canada has about 6 million barrels per day. Norway, 4 million barrels per day. Saudi Arabia, 10 to 11 million barrels per day. Norway uses its oil to build a 1.5 plus trillion oil fund, which is one of the largest wealth funds on earth. Canada has far more resources than Norway, yet we keep acting like developing our own energy sector is a problem. Imagine how prosperous Canada could be if we treated our oil the way Norway did. Norway treats oil like a national asset. Canada treats it like a political problem and like an issue, like something that shouldn't be touched, because the architects of the green scam worldwide, the global green scam, is now the prime minister of the country.
Yeah, exactly.
And was working on the shadows before that. So.
And the $300 billion or whatever the economy is every year for Alberta, I think it's around $300 billion, could potentially be $2 trillion if you didn't have any restrictions and you were able to access all your natural resources. We're not just talking oil here. We did a couple of videos on the Alberta economy, the mining resources, all the other kinds of resources within Alberta is absolutely immense. The sovereign wealth fund you would have would dwarf almost every other country in the world.
And there's already other countries that do use that and use that scheme and have been able to not tax their citizens.
Yeah.
It's infuriating.
And you can have your CPP fund not just invested in the stock market. You have so much natural resources.
Or you could invest it yourself.
Part of it could be in the stock market, and then part of it could be put into gold, silver, other hard assets. So if the stock market absolutely falls off a cliff, that your CPP is not actually at risk. Because right now, if the stock market falls off a cliff, Canada's not going to have a CPP.
Or just put it into a special fund where you can accrue interest and etc. through not providing it to the government and hoping that they take care of your pension plan.
Okay, let's continue.
That's a whole other third rail I'm not going to touch right now. From the United Conservative Party of Alberta, Premier Smith says, quote, the cost of guest workers on our healthcare system, our education system, and our other social services is significant. $2.5 billion on people who have not made a permanent commitment to the province.
Well, I think Danielle Smith got her hair done and she started doing the media tour here, wanting to show it off. She's been doing a lot of interviews the last few days.
She looks good.
Make no mistake, the cost of guest workers on our healthcare system, our education system, and our other social services is significant. We did a deep dive in looking at the complexity of our classrooms to understand what has happened in our student population in the last 4 years. And we have gone from having 47,000 students who were English language learners to over 100,000 students. Of the temporary guest worker category, we have about 45,000 students who are who have parents who are in that category. That costs $600 million to taxpayers. And then if you look at the total of 282,000 guest workers, that is a cost at about $6,800 per person on healthcare of about $1.9 billion. So yeah, $2.5 billion on people who have not made a permanent commitment to our province and our country to be long-term taxpayers, arriving with more cost to our system than tax revenues that they generate. That's a problem. That's not what used to happen. We used to lead with bringing in economic migrants. They would be taxpayers for a few years. They would commit to becoming permanent residents. Then they'd bring their families over, and then they'd be able to be building a life here. But we shouldn't be having people who are here temporarily bringing spouses and families and putting a greater burden on taxpayers than they're generating in revenue. That's the question that we're putting forward. So yes, it is a very significant portion of our cost, probably about a third of the deficit that we're looking at.
Okay, and
who let them in?
She asked for a lot of these immigrants, and she asked for them through the federal government. She knew what kind of immigrants were coming in, and this is why Alberta needs independence. It needs control over its immigration system so it can bring people in that are actually going to be working, already kind of have a job, are going to be paying into the tax system. The fact that you're bringing in low-wage immigrants and it's really being flooded by the federal government, it's going to be even more so flooded the closer this independence vote goes. They're not going to want multi-generational Albertans voting in independence. They're going to want to make sure the majority of the vote is immigrants.
But again, who let them in? Who didn't try to stop the federal government? Who asked the federal government for more? Why are there no more? Why aren't there more schemes to get families to have children? And that's how you plan to repopulate. That's still insane.
Well, they're going to need immigration in the beginning, but they can go. Alberta is in a very special place because you have high-paying jobs. You can make sure every Albertan has a job before you go to immigration. When you go to immigration, because you're having high-paying jobs, you can go to whatever country you want, whether it's the United States, whether it's Europe, and you can recruit people that will definitely take the jobs and want to immigrate. And you can get people with long-term commitments.
And you're also able to decide, again, that bringing in higher skilled people that bring in something to the economy, to the culture, to the country itself of Alberta.
Exactly.
And I came under when it was still that way in Canada. That's how I came into Canada as a student, when it was still pretty restrictive and you had to jump through hoops, essentially, to be able to be a student or get a work permit, etc. And then I saw the complete destruction of it. And there are other immigrants that I talk to that say, why did I have to go through all of that when now there's people that nobody's even checking if they're allowed to be in the country or not?
Yeah. And
they'll just come in through planes and say, yes, I'm here as a visitor. And then they stay for ever.
Okay, we can go into...
Until they realize how expensive it is.
You can go. She's originally from Mexico.
Yes, I'm from Mexico.
I was born in Canada. We met when she came there.
Yes, I'm from Mexico and now we're back in Mexico.
Thank God we had that escape route actually open to us. Otherwise, we'd be stuck in BC, and what's going on in BC now is horrifying.
Yeah. From Alberta Proud Dad, quote, huge win for Danielle Smith today. Alberta taking the lead instead of Ottawa is a major step in the right direction. I'm still pro-independence, but this is exactly how you strengthen Alberta's sovereignty.
And I don't agree with this. Keith Wilson made a statement on this. This is, again, is...
Do you want me to read it?
You can read a little bit of it. I just want to forewarn, it's not as it looks.
Alberta, not Ottawa, to take lead on provincial project approvals. Provincial projects, Ottawa will recognize Alberta as the lead regulator and rely on their environmental review. And shared projects, Ottawa will integrate Alberta's environmental and regulatory requirements into new approvals.
Okay, and let's go into Keith Wilson's response here. Hopefully I have it right after.
Yes. So Keith Wilson says, quote, unfortunately, nothing in this new agreement addresses Alberta's most critical infrastructure challenge, a new pipeline to Tidewater on the BC coast. Changing who conducts an impact assessment does not remove the political and regulatory barriers that have stopped tidewater pipelines in the past. Carney's many public statements declaring that First Nations or the BC government effectively hold the veto power over such projects effectively blocks new coastal pipelines.
Stop there for a moment. We're going to read the rest in a minute, but this is why it's so important to have somebody like Keith Wilson heading this movement. He has massive trust within the movement. If I had my vote for who would be the first prime minister, president, or king of Alberta, it would be Keith Wilson at this point. There's not a better figure. And when stuff like this comes out and is promoted by the Danielle Smith, the Albertan government, and the federal government, it's good to have somebody with this kind of legal expertise we can trust kind of dissect it on the spot.
If Prime Minister Carney is serious about enabling industry and business to grow the economy, the federal framework must provide clear and reasonable rules that allow all projects, including pipelines to tidewater, to proceed once environmental and technical standards are met. Without that certainty, the new agreement will do little to advance the projects Alberta's economy depends on. And Carney knows that. He wants to keep our oil and gas in the ground because he is an environmental ideologue who thinks the planet is at risk and he's going to heroically save it. And I do disagree with him on that last point. I think Mark Carney, as you said, I think Mark Carney, as you said, had built the infrastructure for the new global economy all around climate change. I don't think he believes it.
No. And I will say this is another big reason they're making these land grabs and the government is ceding all their land back to the Indigenous. They want to make sure, number one, BC never does what Alberta does and actually asks for its own independence. That's number one. But number two is if Alberta actually gets its independence, it wants to make sure it's 100% blocked from any coastline, meaning the federal government's going to say, even if you have our approval, it's not our land anymore. They're going to keep ceding land, especially coastal land, to make sure Alberta can never access the coast through BC. I think that's one of the big parts of this plan. That's why having the U.S. to the south is going to be critically important as well. But I also think it could potentially backfire, meaning if enough land is ceded to one tribe and it gives Alberta a direct shot to the coastline, they could potentially just deal with that one tribe.
And also the bureaucracy from Marty up north, quote, an independent Alberta would eliminate...
One moment, and I was just thinking about this the other day, and it was... I got a little bit... I guess I was a little scared when I was thinking about it. And I was like, they're ceding all these lands to these BC tribes, and they're ceding land not where these tribes live, but they're saying, well, this is our ancestral hunting land. So places they never even lived, they're ceding the land. What happens when interior tribal bands start claiming that parts of Alberta are actually their land? Is that a way around all the tribes that have already ceded the land within Alberta, is to have BC tribes say, oh, the Alberta land's actually ours. That used to be our hunting land.
Again, I wouldn't put anything past these people.
Nobody's brought that up, and I would like to, I'm interested. Maybe Keith Wilson could take that question.
Or maybe that lawyer that's been making the podcast rounds. Maybe I can get him to interview with us because he's been explaining the BC thing pretty well. We have him a bit later on. From Marty up north, quote, an independent Alberta would eliminate an entire level of bureaucracy and leave every Albertan with more money in their pockets at the end of the day.
It's a troubling new survey on how the rising cost of groceries is impacting Canadians. Many say they're eating less healthy food and increasingly buying on credit just to keep up. CTV's Kimberly Fowler reports.
We're gonna make some lasagna. Gail Barrett is finishing up a grocery run for the day at this local Walmart. Onion for aromatic. This is her last stop after shopping at Costco earlier in the day, getting food for her family. Proper nutrition is important, but we're cutting back in other areas, right? To make sure that we can afford the groceries. I just kind of go to the spots that I know generally have good prices and buy what I can buy. With rising grocery prices, some Canadians are consciously making hard choices to save money.
If it's not on sale, we're not buying it. Like Fresco and like Walmart are like the places to go, I find. And like if you go to Farm Boy or like anywhere else, it's just like insane.
A new survey from debt relief firm Spurgle finds in the past 6 months, just over 60% of respondents say they skip meals or reduce their portions.
It just absolutely disgusts me. And when we get to the Canadian section, if we have enough time today, there's a whole section on cost of food within Canada. It's disgusting, especially when you have a temporary solution. You've created food monopolies with inside Canada, number one. The temporary solution is to take off the tariff on U.S. food, allow U.S. food to come into the Canadian market. That will dramatically lower the price of food temporarily while you undo these monopolies so you can actually have food competition within Canada and then rebuild your food industries.
And stop the bureaucracy around raising and being able to have a farm and farming and agriculture around Canada too.
More than half say they use credit cards, loans, or lines of credit to pay for groceries. And about 40% say they delayed paying a bill to buy groceries. The survey also finds many are purchasing less meats or proteins and cutting back on fruits and vegetables.
The price of a container of strawberries is like $14 now compared to what it used to be. Even buying baby food.
That's insane.
There's a story. Well, there's a story we have later on when she says the price of strawberries. This guy brought his 2 kids to a berry farm. Ended up they wanted a snack. $40 worth of berries later for his 2 kids. Absolutely disgusting what's going on with food. We now live in Mexico, so a lot of people don't realize how high food prices are. I mean, they think they're high, but when you move to somewhere like Mexico, you're shocked at how much you were paying before.
Even in the US, even comparatively to the US, the food prices are insane in Canada. Even after you figure out the exchange rate, it's still insane.
Well, one of the great things about
people in the US are complaining.
One of the great things about Alberta is a lot of people work in camps and the food is plentiful and lots. I used to love camp food.
Formula, I mean, it's tripled the price over the past few years.
Experts say the affordability crisis is leading to more Canadians going into debt and relying on credit to make everyday purchases.
They can't afford to pay the credit cards because the credit card interest rates are so high. We see a lot of times we go over the budget with them. It's sad to see that their food budget is limited, and we know they're not living on that.
Toman says, look at your budget, and if you're struggling financially, don't be afraid to ask for help.
I always suggest they reach out to their community, if their churches, the community resources, the food bank, if they can. Also buy in bulk.
Yeah, oh, that's the end of the clip. Yeah, reach out to your food bank, reach out to this, reach out to that. If they were refugees or immigrants, they wouldn't have to reach out to anybody. The government would reaching out to them, giving them thousands of dollars. It's time to stop this disgusting refugee program, which is a voter scheme to create a new extremely left bloc. They want to indoctrinate this bloc because citizens that live within the country typically won't go as far left as the government is right now. So they need a new voting bloc. This is why it's crucially important for Alberta to get its independence. But again, if you are an immigrant in Canada, the Canadian government's going to make sure you're taken care of, you're fed, your medical needs are taken care of. But if you're
by the taxpayer.
But if you're a citizen, you're on your own.
But I also think they might be pushing a lot of these stories a little bit more right now. And as we're heading into tax season, or tax season is about to be over, which I have to do mine, by the way. I always forget, right?
You should, because it's a $1,000 rebate.
That's what I was going to talk about. I think they're pushing a lot of these things to say, oh, but don't worry, the grocery rebate, which was already another rebate that you used to get, it was just renamed, is coming soon. So now get your little allowance from daddy government and be happy that we're actually helping you reduce the price of food and the cost of food. When no, it's a 1 or 2-time payment depending on which scheme you're under. But again, this is why I think they're starting to push on CTV this kinds of news, so they can then say, oh, but don't worry, here comes the little allowance you're going to get from daddy government.
Well, that daddy government allowance they're giving people for food only makes food inflation go even higher.
Exactly. Should I read some comments?
Yeah, let's go to a few comments and then we'll get back to the stories.
Canadian Spider-Man says this will lead to more division and racism, just what the powers that be prefer. Exactly. And more polarization by painting it, the whole reconciliation thing, a First Nations thing. That's eventually where it leads to.
Well, the Canadian government wants to hit you in the face, and then if you hit back, they want to arrest you and say, why did you get violent? It's absolutely insane. Before we keep going, again, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. We're a small channel. We're really trying to grow. I used to not say subscribe, but it's important because censorship laws are coming in this week, I believe, in Canada.
And especially now that we're trying to reach out to other content creators or other people that are involved with several different topics so we can interview them, because I'd love to interview them. It helps if the subscriber count is a bit higher. So sometimes they just don't even look at you. Unfortunately, that's how it works. Canadian Spider-Man says, exactly. How about everyone gets treated equally and has the same rights and pays taxes, equality across the board. Natives should not lose rights, but instead let's bring everyone up to that level. Exactly. Well, and because the scheme has already been set up,
this was
just make everybody actually equal.
This was such a sensitive topic in the Alberta Independence movement 8 months ago about specialty groups. it needs to be talked about because of what's happening in BC now. People can see because of what's happening with their neighbor and how it's going to impact them, what it actually means to have a specialty group. And in the larger context, when you look at Chile, when you look at all these other Central and South American countries, as well as European countries, the UN is trying to use First Nations and Indigenous people to take away property rights. It's obvious what's happening. This has always been the plan. The UN implemented these laws almost half a decade ago now. You're just seeing it on the ground now in BC. That being said, oh God, I lost my train of thought. Okay.
CCAG.
Oh, that being said, I was going to say about First Nations, if Alberta does form its own nation, you're going to obviously stop remittance payments to the federal government, but there are a lot of groups within Alberta Independence that want to start remittance payments to First Nations tribes within Alberta. And it's not a good idea. It's only going to help codify a specialty group and specialty class. And this is an issue on a global level right now.
CCATG says the only problem in Costa Rica is trying to get anything repaired. It took 6 months for a vehicle repair. I don't know about Panama. I have lived in many places. I can tell people the places to avoid. Here in Mexico, we just had car trouble, and we talked about it on the stream about a month. For the past 2 months, we've had car issues. And luckily, luckily I'm from Mexico and I have roots here, so I kind of know how it works, but I'd kind of forgotten because in Canada it's very different how you have to deal with people, especially that are fixing things or repairing things. Sorry, something moved. Fixing things and repairing things. And here in Latin American countries, sometimes you have to be a bit more forceful or know someone or know who to talk to. So it is useful to have kind of a group of people there that know how the system works. Because here I'd forgotten, and friends and family reminded me that you do have to be, you have to do things a bit differently here in the South.
Yeah, but it's not financially backbreaking when you need something repaired on your car or you need something repaired in your home. You can get it done and you can get it done very cheaply, which is nice.
Quickly.
I remember needing something repaired in the house. Absolutely crazy just to get somebody to come out there to fix it. Or if it's your car will literally bankrupt you in Canada.
And I mean, we could go into healthcare, but we'll go into it in a bit. Canadian Spider-Man says, that is a problem, but not if you learn to fix things yourself, which can be pretty satisfying too. And also looking around in Latin America or finding different people that could do the same thing or that know how to do it and will do it properly and cheaper. There's always that option too. But yes, having and knowing who to go to is important.
Yeah,
I will say. Also says the other problem with Costa Rica is parts for cars and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why Mexico is good, because Mexico has been a lot more modern in a way. And there's a lot more, especially Mexico City, I will say.
Well, I would say of every single Central South American country, every single Latin country, including Brazil, Mexico is the easiest to get things.
Yeah.
It's the most
well, Panama is pretty easy too, just because it is used as a hub for the rest of the northern part. And again, the canal is right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mexico and Panama, I would say, are good for that. CCHEG says, who will defend First Nations bands if a war broke out? Canadian soldiers defended this land in 2 world wars. Who will defend the First Nations now?
I don't get it.
Who will defend the First Nations bands if a war broke out? Canadian soldiers defended Canadian land in 2 world wars. Who will defend First Nations?
Well, you would hope First Nations, but the truth of the matter is a lot of these reservations in tribal land, 60 to 70% of the tribal band actually lives in cities. They don't live on the land. A lot of them don't even visit the land anymore.
And also says
they want the benefit of $1 billion remittance payments going to them for natural resources. It's going to become a big problem later on.
And also asks where are Canadian soldiers' pieces of land for their sacrifices?
Yeah, and
those are going to get taken into account.
That's a absolute huge issue, even in the States with oh God, it's not called Medicare. It's called, I forgot. But the way soldiers are treated even after they come home.
2 more. Canadian man says there's nothing here worth defending these days. Alberta will be the last bastion. Yeah, it's the last hope, honestly. At this time, it is the last hope.
And the question is, what links is the federal government going to go to stop this? Yeah. Because they're obviously going to do it. And that's why it's going to take an effort of every single person in Alberta, a lot of people within Canada, a lot of people in the United States, and a lot of people on an international level. Mm-hmm. Because once they stop one group of people from talking, it's going to become very important for people in the United States to start talking about this, or internationally, because of censorship laws coming to Canada.
And CCHEG says, censor me now because I'm providing the facts. If YouTube is censoring you, you can go to rumble.com. We're also streaming there. Again, we don't censor, we don't block anyone. We don't even have, what are they called? The ones that...
Just keep going.
The ones that check the stream. The ones that check
Moderators.
the comments. Moderators.
I was trying to think of it too.
I was thinking of
Not
the key
that you were
wrench,
dumb.
But yeah, we don't have any of those. So if the comment is censored, it's usually by YouTube, or because you used an emoji or a link. Those are blocked because of spam. Yeah. I just wanted to highlight that comment to say that.
Yeah, and I will say, I know our show is really long. We have typically it's a 3-hour show, but it's absolutely packed with information. I gather a minimum of 50 stories, usually up to 75. We rarely get to them all. Almost every single story is involving Alberta independence. So,
should we continue? Because we have a lot more comments.
We do. Okay,
yes.
Why don't we do 2 more stories, then we'll go back into comments.
Okay, hold on. Then I have to go here. Oh, and... Okay, from Alberta Proud Dad, quote, why was the guy...
I will say this, I have liked this content creator. I just happen to disagree with him in this particular sense.
From Alberta Proud Dad says, quote, why was a guy from Ontario debating Alberta independence? Surely Alberta has enough voices of its own to represent the future of the province.
Okay, and he's talking about the debate that happened between Jason Kenney and Professor Party. Harrison Faulkner is the one that hosted that debate. It was a fantastic debate. There's a lot of people within the independence movement disregarding this because it's 2 people from Ontario. Professor Purdy has been firmly in support of Alberta independence, number 1. But number 2, he ran circles around Jason Kenney, and he did it in the best possible way. Jason Kenney was ready for an economics debate. Professor Party beat him on economics, but Professor Party focused on all the cultural issues, how the electoral system is rigged in Canada, how Albertans are absolutely done with Canada, and there is no more loyalty when Canada has turned its back on Alberta already. Anybody that's going to do a debate on Alberta independence, I highly recommend watching that. This gentleman said he didn't even watch the debate, yet he wants to judge it.
How would Albertans convince Ontario, for example, that essentially has a veto over this, to accept and approve the outcome of a separatist referendum result?
What it says is, if a province passes a referendum on a clear question and a clear majority approves of it.
Now, I didn't watch the whole debate. You might have, but you immediately lose me when you have Bruce Party from Ontario trying to talk pro-independence.
And a lot of people don't like Bruce Party because before the issue was ever a thing about having specialty groups, he's the one that brought it up. There are a lot of people within Alberta Independence that have dual loyalties. They're Alberta Independence and First Nations. And there's a lot of deals trying to be cut in the background. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to make Bruce Party an other within the movement.
But I will also say, and I've said it on, I think, every live stream, I mean, us talking from Mexico, we moved away from British Columbia, but we want to support and fully support the Alberta independence movement because we already became independent from Canada. Like, we already went through it. We already saw what happened, lost hope in Canada, and fully understand at least most of it and want to support the movement to see an actual change, that glimmer of hope we saw during the Freedom Convoy. That is what started our whole channel in general. And I will say, I don't want to sound preachy, but if you don't want people from outside of Alberta talking or supporting Alberta independence, are you really in a position to deny those people from speaking up for you and speaking up for Alberta independence?
It's fine for people that have an opinion that people outside of Alberta shouldn't be speaking up. The problem is, with censorship bills now coming, they're going to be in effect probably within the next 2 weeks, and there's 2 more on the shelf. Content creators, and to get the message out about Alberta independence, it might end up falling on the back of U.S. content creators and international content creators. And typically these are people that were so disenfranchised with Canada, they had already left. Mm-hmm. And they're seeing a lot of hope in Alberta independence. Mm-hmm. So, okay.
And speaking of debates, guess who the CBC brought on to debate this same exact topic? The retard Hassan Piker.
And we used to cover a lot of social media personalities and international politics and U.S. politics. Yeah. He is a complete left-wing ideologue. The fact that CBC is bringing him on is absolutely insane.
The dog abuser Hassan Piker from YG Wave, quote, CBC brought on Hassan Piker, a streamer from the USA, to discuss Alberta separatism.
And again, he's a full-on communist. I mean, we've seen what happened earlier with the group that wanted to protest Alberta independence with their little logo. It's all these little communist groups trying to stand up against Alberta independence. I think that's a good compare and contrast for the Alberta independence movement. This hurts nationalists that are against independence.
What do you think of some of the rumblings from Alberta talking about how they want to separate?
I don't understand Albertan separatists at all. As someone who lives in America, you don't want to know what it looks like when you have no health care that's backed by the government at all. It's not great.
They already know. That's what Canada's free healthcare actually is, with wait times and MAID being used instead of actual healthcare.
It's interesting to see the same exact separatist movements being implemented in a Western country that's such a close ally to the United States of America, because this is what we have done for decades to Latin American countries, to countries in the Middle East, and now it almost feels like we're doing it haphazardly to one of our most loyal allies in the North.
What do you think of some of
I think what he said there is crucially important, and I think this is going to become the narrative. And I think he's the first one to bring this narrative up, and that is we used to do this to a lot of South American countries, and now we're doing it to our neighbor to the north. They're going to try to frame this as Donald Trump is the organizer of the Alberta independence movement, and they're going to try to turn Albertans on Albertans.
And it's insane to frame it that way as well, because he's saying, I mean, the U.S. is Canada's greatest ally. That's not what Mark Carney says. That's not what the federal government actually says.
But that is what they want to say. But they can't say it because they need to get a tariff deal with Trump. So they're going to get people like Hassan Piker to say it for them. And the Elbows Up campaign has worked so well for Mark Carney. You better believe they're going to have an Elbows Up campaign that involves TDS syndrome against the Alberta independence movement. We need to kind of compare for this talking point.
And they've already kind of started it anyways.
Yeah.
But from Keith Wilson, quote, Alberta needs to separate and quickly. This is madness because, National Post says, Jamie Sarkonek, Chief Justice, says existence of Canada's border is discrimination.
Yeah, and this was you can actually click on the article. Let's see what happens if it brings us to the headline.
It brought me to the picture.
Oh, to the picture.
Let me try
Okay.
to figure it out.
That's fine. You can just leave it on there then.
Yeah, it's just a picture. Oh, no, there we go. But maybe I have to pay for it. I don't want to pay for it.
Just the headline you can read.
Yeah. So the Supreme Court says low-cost public daycare must be given to asylum seekers too, and Richard Wagner wants to go further.
Yeah, so they want to pay for asylum seekers daycare. Daycare in Canada is typically about $1,000 per child. If you have 2 children, it's usually $2,200. It's an insane amount of money. Yet asylum seekers get free daycare. Asylum seekers can't work in Canada, as far as I know. If they're not working, why do they need daycare?
And also, why not create the conditions for Canadian mothers to actually be able to mother their children during the 3 or 4 first years that are the most important in a child's development and that actually get incredibly hindered by being sent to daycare? Why not create those conditions instead of say stupid things like that?
Well, this ruling was actually extremely, extremely controversial because when he ruled on it in his statement, he actually went outside what the law should have been. And he said it was discriminatory for us as a Canadian government not to give daycare to these refugees. So it's a way that the judges are now making their rulings on ideology rather than law. And that was the big controversy of this case. And that's why a lot of these judges have been appointed. And they've been indoctrinated in their schools long before they were ever given these court appointees.
Yeah. But from Jeff Rath, he says, quote, for a government so adept at spending money, it seems strange that the Liberals couldn't have placed a $50 billion order for U.S. Chinook helicopters. Chinook, what?
Chinook helicopters.
Those. Surveillance drones, attack drones, armored personnel carriers, more U.S. fighter planes of any designation, and other necessary equipment. Improve Canada's relationship with the U.S., eliminate the trade deficit, removing any excuse for tariffs, and meet its NATO obligation, all at the same time. Needless to say, Carney's bosses in China told him not to do this.
Yeah, it's obvious.
And this is because Canada misses NATO's 2% GDP defense spending target, despite promises from the Carney government.
Well, I don't know how he missed the 2%. Missed the 5% spending by 2% because Mark Carney was literally writing off infrastructure projects like bridges as defense spending, yet he still wasn't able to meet it. This is absolutely insane, especially when you need a tariff deal. The future of Canada is absolutely going to depend on it. You need to align with the United States. You can look at the South American countries. You can look at a country like Mexico, who has the North American Free Trade Agreement, who is completely cooperating behind the scenes with Trump and is getting rewarded for it.
Also, speaking of, I spoke about it in my Spanish show on Friday that Mexico, Brazil, and Colombia were not invited to that meeting with Trump recently. All the other presidents were. Canada was also not invited, and I didn't even mention it in my Spanish show, but that's also an interesting omission.
Yeah, so he's kind of making the shield of Americas
shield of the Americas
of actually aligned countries within the Western Hemisphere. A bunch of countries went. Canada wasn't there. And they weren't there in a good way, meaning it was very intentional. Canada wasn't there. Mexico also wasn't there, but they weren't there for a completely different reason. Sheinbaum can't be there because if she's seen as a complete ally to the U.S., it's going to be off with her head from the cartels. Now, that being said, she is giving complete cooperation behind the scenes to Donald Trump, but forward-facing to the media, Trump has allowed her to kind of speak against it. But it looks like Mexico is going to get an amazing tariff deal while Canada is going to be left out in the cold.
But also another reason for Alberta to become more independent or free from Reingertsen, quote, the University of Alberta got rid of DEI practices but might not receive federal funding because they demanded. Country is never in a never-ending leftist loop.
Earlier this year, the University of Alberta pitched a new hiring policy, eliminating equity, diversity, and inclusion. The change was met with some pushback, and now they face a new hurdle. Here's how it all started. A year ago, the U of A president said that EDI had become polarizing, and the school would be moving away from the term. Now, a new hiring policy is in the works that no longer favors equally qualified members of historically underrepresented groups. But that could pose an issue for receiving federal research funding. The Canada Research Chairs program funds the most prestigious research jobs in the country and gives out over $300 million each year. But part of the deal is these jobs have to meet certain EDI standards and targets. These rules were brought in after a number of human rights settlements over the years. Advocates say that before that, money was disproportionately doled out to white men. The U of A says it was careful in writing its new policy to remain compliant with federal rules. But an email obtained by CBC News says the agency that gives out research money isn't so sure. They're concerned about U of A's proposed policy, and senior officials have been in touch to make sure that the school is actually following equity rules. But one political scientist tells me that the federal government should tread carefully because universities are provincial jurisdiction, and getting too involved with how they do their hiring could be seen as overstepping. But the policy that started all of this hasn't even been approved yet. That will be up to the university board later this month.
Okay, and this is critically important because this is how they flip institutions, capture institutions, capture unions. Unions have been a big issue lately, especially when it comes to Alberta Independence. But federal funding, a lot of these schools have annual federal funding that comes in from grants and from other kinds of financing. That being said, they rely on that. Yeah. So in order for them, even though they want to get rid of DEI, they're not going to be able to as soon as a little pressure is applied to them. Mm-hmm. And NGOs are going to point this out to the federal government.
Exactly. So again, it's an impossible loop that you're stuck in.
It's not an impossible loop. If Alberta gains its independence, you get rid of your overlords and you can make sure that these DEI and ESG structures aren't built into your system. A matter of fact, you can make sure that you're anti-fragile and you can make sure these aren't in your system at all. Sorry, I'm losing my talk after
your talk.
Losing my talk after 2 hours.
Your words. We still got one more hour to go. Do you want me to read messages or?
Let's do a couple messages. Try to get your energy up here, Nat.
My energy is up. Canadian Spider-Man says, does Alberta need English teachers? Asking to Joe Rush, cool that you live there. I used to teach English in Japan. Well, according to Danielle Smith, they do need a lot more because there's more students that don't speak English.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe.
Oh, that's crazy.
CCHEG says, you're better off in diamonds because you can't take precious metals over the borders undetected. Yeah. So some countries will allow you to bring them in, others restricted, or you have to do a bunch of special dispensations before you can bring them in.
Yeah, this is why Bitcoin and a lot of cryptocurrencies that have a lot of privacy are very popular. And that's why they're never going to lose complete value. They'll always retain a lot of value because of cartels and other criminal organizations that need to move their money off over borders. But this also benefits citizens if they need to move their money over borders.
And Canadian Spider-Man says what? Canadian Spider-Man says, my ancestors used to hunt in the Scottish Highlands. Can I go claim land there? You can go claim a kingdom, I guess, if you want.
But there was that scam.
Oh, yeah, the land title thing.
The land title making everybody a lord because you buy a little part of Scottish land.
Yeah, I don't want to.
They were exposed as a scam.
Yeah. But exactly. That's what people don't understand. Like, when does it end? When are they reconciled? When will people, just in general, not just in Canada, be happy? And this also came up in the US when there was the reparations talk. When will it be enough?
Well, and that's the thing with
and who gets to suffer the consequences from it as well.
This is the thing about places like Ireland and the UK that, especially Ireland, they were the underclass. They didn't enslave anybody or colonize anybody or anything like that. So they need a completely different talking points when they go into countries like that. Mm-hmm. But it's all the same goal. They want to get rid of private property rights. I'm really losing my ability to speak now.
And Joe Rush says, I can't speak on the reservations. I know nothing about the teaching industry. Well, again, Danielle Smith just said they need more English teachers, apparently. And Canadian Spider-Man says, another reason why I don't want socialized medicine. So many Canadians eat lazily and do not exercise, not paying for their lack of discipline. But also they can't, I mean, it's becoming impossible to just even eat in general.
Well, also, because there's so much private industry within Alberta, if it gets its independence, you can have a private healthcare system paid for by insurance and then have a public healthcare system as well. The private healthcare system will take a lot of stress off of the public healthcare system. And the private healthcare system doesn't cost you anything because it's mainly the natural resource companies paying for a lot of it.
And that's what I'm saying. Canada has to stop being so proud of their healthcare system because you know there's a problem there. You just don't want to admit it.
Well, and it's the only healthcare system in the world that is a complete monopoly. Every other country has a private and public healthcare system, and they need the model like that so the public healthcare system can take relief off of the public. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if I said that right.
Yes, you did. CCHEG says, I'm French, directly from France. France descendants came over in 1909, never used the French language in Alberta, and I refuse to. The whole French language debate is just another thing where it's like, when is it going to be enough?
Well, we've seen they're funding French language individuals within Alberta, $20 million in order to go against the Alberta Independence movement. This is crazy. And there's barely any French speakers within Alberta. Probably the most famous, which I think he is PJ the Belt, I think. I see a French accent on him,
or
but maybe
some
not.
Sort of accent. Canadian Spider-Man says, the freshness of food in Mexico is worth the move. Fresh seafood and vegetable and fruit that ripened on the trees. That was also a crazy thing because my taste buds forgot what food used to taste like back in Canada. It's insane how insipid food is in Canada. And who knows how they're pumping it full of. Because again, you can't grow fresh food in most of Canada, and yet there it is. But how did it get there and why is it so fresh?
Well, they're trying to bring in an invisible plastic coating that you can eat in order to keep vegetables fresher for longer in Canada. And then they don't have to label artificial meat as artificial meat. They can sell it as real meat and never tell individuals what they're actually buying. It's insane to me.
Mm-hmm. And I'll read some from our UMBLE just because I don't want to leave you all behind.
Right, and then we'll go back to a few stories.
Yes. KP for you says, awesome, just learning how this works. Love your podcast. Big fan. Thank you so much. And also says, if Jeff Rath has just defended Native rights against the Canadian government for 20 years, don't you think he would be scared of the treaties?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions regarding him. We haven't kind of gone into it. A lot of people won't touch it because of a lot of things that happened to Professor Party. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Christu says, evening, guys. And KP4U said, you two are on fire. Thank you. Christu says, Evening, guys. Let's go, Alberta Independence. Good talk as usual. And also says, we have the opportunity to create a model for the rest of the world. Let's bring back sanity and common sense. Everything else is just noise.
And I'm going to wait a little bit closer to when we get to the time of actual independence before I talk about this. But I've been watching a lot of videos on how you're going to actually form the nation of Alberta the day after. And is it going to be a constitutional republic, or what other kind of governmental systems are there going to be? Who's going to have a vote on it? And it's a little bit concerning on who they want to have a vote. It seems like all these special interest groups they want to bring into the room and kind of vote on it. And everybody's going to kind of pull for their own special interests, and they're going to negotiate amongst each other. So they each get their own special interest put to the top and put it in the Constitution. That's not the way to do it. You need a way to make sure there are no specialty groups, and you can make a Constitution that's going to last not only for 100 years, not 200 years, but 1,000 years or more.
Make it Founding Fathers style.
Yeah. It needs to be cohesive, not a bunch of groups debating and then negotiating for their own benefit.
For their own interests.
Yeah, it needs to be cohesive for every person in Alberta, and it's beneficial for every person in Alberta. And that's why it's important everybody is the same under the eyes of the law. Okay, read 2 more comments, then do the stories. I'm going to make myself a coffee real quick.
I guess now
I'm having trouble talking.
Now it's not in your language. This is what my Spanish show usually looks like. Christus says, emigrated to Canada through the Quebec program 20 years ago. Passed the interview in French, but can't count to 10 in that language. Honestly, landed straight to Calgary. Well, glad you passed and glad you are in Calgary. I didn't even know that was a program. Ethel, says, I think they already reversed the ruling on clone meat, so they are supposed to provide... The guy says hi to Ethel. So they're supposed to provide a label for now. Hopefully that's good, but the fact that it was pushed through initially, and who knows how big the label has to be, what has to be on the label. There's a lot of questions on that too. Christu says, constitutional republic all the way, and the citizens on our new country will have to get used to being active in their own affairs as per the Swiss model. Again, and that is what true equality is, and the fact that there's discussions that certain interest groups should come in. It should be just nobody... I would say nobody should be able to try to debate for more or less during the founding of the country and the Constitution. It should just be bring up everyone's rights up to where the First Nations rights are, and then everybody's equal under the law, actually equal under the law. Canadian Spider-Man says, camp food in the Yukon was all shipped by Cisco trucks, packaged crap, but the chefs did miracles with it. They made delicious food, but it was all pre-packaged crap, nothing like what I eat here. And there's a whole thing going on also regarding shipping food in the style of Cisco trucks and all of that. That is pretty interesting, because in the US and in Canada especially, a lot of the food that you eat at restaurants or universities or camps, etc., is all also monopolized by the two big industries that do that. So it's interesting to look into where food comes from and where it would be better for it to come from. Canadian Spider-Man says, farm eggs and beef are so much better. And I think incentivizing farming practices more and taking away all the bureaucracy around that is also very important, especially in Alberta that does have a tradition of that, and just incentivizing people to do that as well.
I got my coffee.
Good. CCAGG says, so my ancestors were in France longer than yours, LOL, and I can speak French fluently because I grew up in St. Boniface, Manitoba, but I live in Alberta. Have lived in Alberta for 40 years and never speak French. I still don't, as a Mexican, I still don't understand the whole French language, English language thing. And I know there's a debate going on there too, but...
It's because the Laurentian elites. The same reason they have so much power politically is the same reason their language is even recognized. And maybe it's just me, but I can't stand French people. They're just so arrogant.
Certain ones.
Well, there's an exception.
Spanish people from Spain are also
There's an exception to every rule, but...
Yeah. Spanish people from Spain, not a fan of either. CCHG says, we all need to pay for the handouts in the end. Exactly. And nothing is free. Nothing. If the government says it's free, it means somebody is paying for it.
Well, we did it.
And CCHG, I'm sure you being French is fine.
Yeah.
The guy likes you.
And the thing was, we did a video on Jason Kinney recently. Oh, actually, when we were filming that video, I got a funny story. But there was a clip we put of him in there saying, Albertans want to be nothing but a welfare state. They think they want independence. No, they want welfare. And that's just the biggest lie of a statement that man's ever made, and he's made a lot of lies. If that's the talking point he's going to try to bring forward, Alberta is one of the it is the hardest working province in Canada. It's
only working
It's
province.
nothing but blue collar workers that want to build a nation from the ground up, and they're the ones holding Canada up. They don't want a welfare state, but the immigrants that the federal government's placing in Alberta is turning Alberta into a welfare state.
And the few lemmings of a liberal within all the problem, I mean, the rest of the provinces, a lot of them have become accustomed to that model of daddy government, give me, we want more stuff. Instead of let's provide for ourselves and actually build things that are worth it instead of getting the whatever will come crappily because it's free. But TCHEG says, I consider myself an Albertan now, nothing else. Good.
Great.
Joe Rush says, I'm a genealogist and have researched my family history back to 1585. Wow.
Wow.
That's cool.
That is pretty cool. And PJ the Belt's trying to put that out there a lot for Albertans. Identify as Albertans, not Canadians anymore. And I think that's going to be important for the movement going forward as well.
Yeah. And this one is important, so I will read it. It says, for snowbirds returning through the Sweetgrass border crossing, South Country Tire in Milk River is open to collect signatures Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. until the end of April. Take a break and sign. Thank you, Jay. And again, I will make a list, I guess, under this live stream, just of all the locations.
Read that border crossing out again.
Okay. Snowbirds returning through the Sweetgrass border crossing, South Country Tire in Milk River, open to collect signatures.
So if you are coming back, maybe you can make sure you go through that border route so you'll guarantee yourself you'll be able to sign the petition. Because a lot of people after coming back from down south are really tired.
And Wild Rose says, have a great night, folks. And thank you for being here and all your insightful comments as well. And Drew says, thanks for all your work, Nat and Guy. Thank you so much for being here and for the comments.
And thanks for all the thank yous. And thank you for everybody that has subscribed and has helped us grow the channel. The lives have been doing extremely well. That's really important because there's a lot of critical information coming out about Alberta independence. And I notice a lot of people that talk about Alberta independence on YouTube. A lot of them are putting information out, but a lot of them are just kind of talking about the issue broadly. Actually getting out the information on what's happening with the petition right now is critically important.
Because X is great and there is a lot more information on X, and a lot of these content creators do have a heavy X presence as well, but like Marty Up North does have some YouTube presence. The thing is, on X, you have to, it's like post by post, and it does becomes kind of a quagmire of trying to find information. Even when I'm trying to find information about it, there are so many posts and there is so much information, but it's not consolidated because each person will have a different thing, and that's great. But being able to aggregate it, I think, is also important. And Drew Mitchell says, no, Marty Up North, I believe, is fluid French speaking. And then they're trying to figure out who speaks what language. Drew Mitchell says,
if anybody knows, does PJ the Belt speak French?
Drew Mitchell says, I don't know that PJ the Belt speaks French. I'm not sure. And yes, Canadian Spider-Man says, yes, Marty Up North is fluent. You're right. And PJ sure does have a French accent there, but he's cool.
He's cool. Yeah,
But I think it could be another kind of accent.
No. I'm almost sure that's a French accent.
I don't know.
And because
it could be.
I worked with a lot of people.
I
worked with a lot of people in the oil field, and they do come from Quebec, and they did have that accent. So that's why I was almost sure. But
I have a little bit of an accent when I'm tired.
I would say PJ the Belt on YouTube is the most hardcore in Alberta independence content creator there is. I mean, he's firmly into the camp of Alberta independence, and will go to the mat for it, even if censorship comes in. I believe there's some other content creators that are saying they're supporting Alberta independence. It's going to be interesting when these censorship laws come in. Are they willing to push back, and how hard?
And we're going to try to interview more and more people within the movement too. Oh Lord, we got a lot of comments on here. No, we're going back.
We're going to do two
Are
more.
you on BLE? We'll get to you in a bit.
We'll do a few more stories, and then we're going to go back to the comments.
Yes. But thank you for all you. Hold on, let me.
Because I was able to make a full coffee while you read all those comments.
Well, I read pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, Neil Roberts says, I think PJ's Brazilian. Again, as a Latin American, I detect something different, but maybe I'm wrong. But Mexican here, so maybe that's why. Ryan Gertison says CBC just can't stop. I don't know what this is, but okay.
I think it's about grocery prices.
Oh, and Trump.
Or Trump. Oh, yeah. I
TDS.
think it's about Trump.
Yeah, no surprise here.
Years since the Buy Canadian movement took off, have consumer buying habits permanently changed?
Canadian nationalism is as strong as it's ever been. Donald Trump kind of united this country in a way that Canadian politicians haven't been able to.
Canadian nationalism, I would call it Canadian socialism. This is what Mark Carney has brought into Canada, this idea of Canadian nationalism, or it's really socialism in disguise.
Canadian derangement is what I'll call it.
Larry McInnes and Mike Okemore created a PSA campaign featuring prominent Canadians and celebrities.
It's maybe a campaign that lasts a couple weeks or a month. Things will probably die down and get back to usual after that. Well, here we are. It's been over a year.
All over the country, grocers are seeing sustained demand for Canadian products.
This is a permanent shift, and that's based on everything I've heard from the members. This is not something that is going to change.
Back at Unbox Market, they're happy that consumer dollars being spent in their store is staying in the country.
We've seen growth and seen more small businesses doing well and doing better on our shelves, which I'm...
Yeah, and I will say in general, the Canadian federal government creates a monopoly within the dairy industry with a lot of these food industries, and now they're convincing Canadians buy into these monopolies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you should be pushing back against this. The immediate relief for food prices is for the Canadians to take the tariffs off of American food, which they've had for decades. This will take down the Canadian food monopolies that they've built and then create real competition within Canada, and then you can rebuild your food industry from the ground up, so it's a lot cheaper.
I'm hoping means that they're doing better on other businesses' shelves as well.
But I'll also say, like, first they do stories about how expensive the food is and food costs and etc. And then they're doing a story about Buy Canadian, and Canada has monopolized a lot of its food supply. So 2 and 2 equals 4.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, what's the next story we got here?
Also from Ryan Gertison, quote, the CBC is running around like the price of fuel in Canada was never $1.52. That was the price just a year ago. It was actually $1.57 in Toronto, and it was because of the carbon tax. Did the media point fingers at our government for high fuel prices over the years, or did they promote the messaging that the carbon tax made life more affordable?
Yeah, and I think for every 5 cents gas goes up, it's about $10 more to fill up a tank. So the fact that gas is shooting up as high as it is.
It's crazy. Sticker shock at the pumps for drivers filling their tanks in Halifax. Supply disruption caused by the conflict in the Middle East is driving the cost of fuel up quickly. The price of gas has jumped close to 15 cents a litre this week alone.
There's like phone bills, rent, medical, and then with the price of gas now, it's going to make it harder to maintain because you're going to either have to work extra shifts or drive less, I guess.
Pause it.
Those are the only 2 options.
And they want to connect Iran with the price of fuel, which obviously it's going up, but it dropped way down today because Trump did announce it should be coming to an end fairly soon. That being said, they're going to want to front load these TDS stories and blame the price of gas on Trump when Mark Carney could easily take away a lot of these carbon taxes, and you would see the price of gas shoot down overnight in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of trying to drive less now because of the price of gas, and I feel like especially with going on in the world right now, it's probably just going to go up. So I'm definitely trying to take public transit more.
My car's hybrid, but a little bit gas are very high.
Plumber Mike Twyman is concerned about the toll the rising costs will have on the most vulnerable.
Well, for me as a small business owner, it's a serious issue, but for people that are poor, I think it's a big issue. Heating costs and things like that, I think it's a big social issue for sure.
The recent jump in price may be only the beginning. As the conflict drags on, the prices may continue to shoot up.
If we take the assumption that flows from the Gulf stop for 5 weeks, then I think we have to be prepared for significantly higher oil prices.
And the truck drivers may be in for another shock this weekend. The Nova Scotia Energy Board says the interrupter is being invoked on Saturday for diesel to reflect a significant shift in market prices. Vernon Ramisar, CBC.
Okay, and let's just be honest with this. Oil prices high are absolutely fantastic for Alberta. And even after they come down, I hope they stay over $70 a barrel because this will help the Alberta Independence movement without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah, it's going to cost a little bit more in your tank right now, but as far as the benefit to push Alberta Independence forward, this is a fantastic time for that. The rest of Canada is going to be hurting though.
But also realizing that it because of the carbon tax and all the other insane things that Mark Carney and before have implemented, that also affects the cost of food. And the cost of everything else, heating, housing,
Yeah, there's one
electricity.
specific tax Polyev was talking about today. Carney could take off overnight, and that would be 7 cents off. And there's multiple other taxes put directly on gas. They could easily drop the price of gas while this war is going on temporarily.
And another insane spending and money news from the CCFR, quote, the Liberals' buyback has experienced so many cost overruns that for just 3 firearms turned over, the government could have paid the starting salary of a full-time RCMP officer, which is $71,191. For only 2 guns, it could have purchased a new fully equipped patrol car and actually make things safer.
They just need to implement the laws they already have. They don't need more laws to de-arm the population and everything else. The population is very compliant to begin with. You need to go after criminals.
Who they're not going after even.
Well, and they originally said it was going to be $6,000 per gun in average cost. Now it's coming out, it's $24,000. This is absolutely insane. And with all the other insane policies on top of that, but the fact that the Canadian government is trying to de-arm a population, especially in Alberta and Saskatchewan, where a lot of people live rurally, they need a lot of these guns. This is one of many cultural differences that the federal government has than Alberta. The easiest solution is to just separate at this point and call it a day. And just to reiterate one more time, this isn't about economics. And Danielle Smith and Pierre Poilievre and Jason Kinney, they want to frame this about economics. So at the very last minute, they can get all these natural resource deals and say, we fixed the problem. No, you haven't fixed the problem, because that was never the problem to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, why don't we'll go one more story and then back to comments.
Okay. From Jeff Rath, quote, Iverson misses the point as usual. Why should Alberta be forced to waste billions on useless carbon-sucking machines simply because our genius masters in Ottawa say so? The point for Albertans is that we are done with the billions of dollars being wasted on non-productive green scams that siphon money out of Alberta's economy for the benefit of con artists in Toronto, because John Iveson said hope for the pipeline deal to survive a clash over carbon taxes. New research could show the benefits of a new pipeline will far outweigh the increase in carbon costs for most oil sands producers.
Yeah, and this is the thing. You're not going to want these big machines that are supposed to suck carbon out of the air. This is part of this economic green scam, this architecture that Carney was building, which was supposed to be not only the future Canadian economy, but the future Western economy. Luckily, Donald Trump's put a monkey wrench in that. And I added the story in because this surprised me when we talked about this the other day. But you don't need carbon sucking machines to take carbon out of the air when you're a carbon negative country in Canada. You have so much land and trees. Those trees suck out carbon naturally from the air. Canada is the one country that doesn't need to have carbon taxes, to have carbon machines to suck carbon out of the air, yet they're the number one country that does it.
From True Science, quote, we now have satellites monitoring carbon dioxide surface flux. The result is that Canada is the net carbon sink, does not add carbon dioxide permanently to the atmosphere, so money spent on emissions reductions is wasted. And I mean, you could read them all individually, but
and this is huge because very few countries in the world have as much landmass and trees as Canada does. It's a net benefit to the environment. Why are you forcing your citizens and your people to suffer in the country on a complete hoax and scam? The science is there now. The science is coming out because it has enough cover from Donald Trump to actually release itself. There was such scientific capture and academic capture. A lot of these studies weren't able to get out over the last couple decades.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go back to comments.
Hold on. Something started playing when I didn't want it to. Drew says, I think PJ is Albertan. Exactly. That's the only thing that should actually matter. PJ is from Alberta. Canadian Spider-Man says, grew up in New Brunswick. I understand the dangers of socialism and a welfare state that is divided by language. New Brunswick is really divided by French. Two-tier system indeed. I'm guessing NB means New Brunswick, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And also says, agreed, Canadians elbows up is just embarrassing and shows our smugness and ignorance.
Yeah, but they're going to run that. They're going to run a similar campaign when it comes to Alberta independence. It's only a matter of time. He's going to prioritize the snap election coming after these 3 by-elections if he fails to win all 3. So that's priority number 1. because once he gets a majority government, it's going to be balls to the walls against Alberta independence. The amount of censorship bills and all these bills he has on the shelf just ready to come in, they're already written. He only needs a vote. If he has a majority government, he can just pass them all in rapid fire and then shut down Alberta independence. This is why it's important to vote reluctantly for Pierre Poilievre if you're not in the Poilievre camp right now. You need to try to hold Mark Carney to a minority government. It's not about propelling Poilievre to a victory. I wish that could happen, but the system is too rigged in Canada. But it's still important for Alberta independence to hold Mark Carney to a minority because of the amount of power he's trying to consolidate to shut down Alberta independence.
Joe Rush says, we have maple, LOL. And Neil Roberts, hello, says $85 a barrel now.
Yeah, well, it was up over 100 and now it went down to 85 because Trump came out with the statement saying that the war should be coming to a conclusion soon. And we already knew that because he had about 4 weeks. After 4 weeks, what happens? It goes to Congress and Congress is going to approve the war. The Uniparty wants a war right now and they want it to be long-term. Trump wants to make sure it doesn't go to Congress. So he wants to be in and out within the 4 weeks.
Like what I said, we had a big debate on this on a past live.
Well, a lot of what's going on behind the scenes, and there's two theories on this. One theory was this was a direct infighting between the United States and the city of London. If that's the case, you're going to see it wind down within a 4 or 5 week time frame. If this was actually about other international players like China and Russia, they'll extend this to a long-term war. A lot of people don't know what's going on with the city of London and the United States. There's been an internal civil war going on there for a long time.
I was saying explain it, but
okay. I thought you were saying wrap it up.
No, I'm saying go on.
If you want to know more about it, Prometheus Action Group is a fantastic channel on YouTube, and so is Tom Longo. Tom Longo is a big supporter of the Alberta independence movement as well, even though he lives in Florida. He's an economist and a geopolitical he does geopolitical analysis. Martin Armstrong runs a prediction model that has accurately predicted the future for a long time now, for decades, long before AI. He's also very much in favor of Alberta independence, and I recommend him for geopolitical commentary as well.
But the whole London thing has to do with shipping, right? Well, that's what I was trying to get to. But
this particular fold of the Civil War going on between the City of London and the United States had everything to do with shipping and insurance. Insurance is monopolized by the City of London, and this allows them to set the price and who gets the benefits of international shipping. If you can't get international shipping on your freighter, you basically can't ship. So they monopolized a lot of power within the London insurance industry, but it was the U.S. Navy that was kind of backing that play. Trump now has said the U.S. is going to insure ships and the U.S. Navy is going to make sure ships get to their destinations. So this has completely undermined that industry. It's way too complex to get into right now, especially.
But I just wanted a quick, a kind of explanation.
Okay.
Joe Rush.
There's a podcast called Guns, Goats, and Gold. Absolutely phenomenal. The most recent episode talked exactly about this.
Joe Rush says or asks, is maple still worth more than gold? No, I think since 2012 it hasn't been. And it was a weird calculation they did to be able to say that, but no.
Well, and it doesn't matter because it's all a hoax anyway. A lot of those barrels were drained. If you've never seen the documentary, I think it's on Netflix called The Great Maple Heist. Canada doesn't keep gold in safes like Fort Knox. They keep maple syrup, but a lot of the barrels were getting drained at night.
Joe Rush says, I remember maple was worth more than gold once upon a day. I remember laughing, thinking that was crazy. And technically, again, the study they did to be able to say that took some things out of account. Drew says, Alberta gets 12% of 4,600,000 barrels a day. I think I'm bad at reading numbers. I'm sorry. This latest increase will wipe out our deficit very quickly.
Well, yeah, that's what I thought as well. And that's what every single Albertan thought. I didn't grab the article today, but Danielle Smith is saying, well, no, the debt's going to remain as is, which is crazy to me. I'll bring it up for the next show. I cannot believe she came out with a statement. Just 2 weeks of higher oil prices should knock out the debt.
And Joe says, oh, it wasn't maple. It was something else I was thinking about. Sorry. Oops, that's okay. I'll read some quickly from Mario and Billy because we have gotten quite a few.
Okay, let's do 3 more comments and then we'll finish the stories in the Alberta section.
Ethel says Canada has 25% of imported population. What constitutional republic can you expect? Indians and Chinese voting on that. Canada is doomed.
Well, and this is the thing. If you don't vote for Alberta independence now, the federal government has already told you by 2030, every citizen, every person will be replaced by an immigrant. 100% of the population. It's no longer going to be by birth rate. The documents have already been put out. This will include Alberta if you don't separate. You are going to become China and India, and your culture will disappear.
And just because it goes into that comment, Christu says, talking about Alberta Republic here, you'd be surprised how many imported residents I've signed up on the petition list. Most of them will bring great value to the table.
Yeah, and I have no problem with people that have immigrated that want to support Alberta independence and want to build a nation. A lot of immigrants, just because they immigrated, doesn't mean they want to bring everybody from their entire country and ruin the country they've now won the lottery ticket to get into.
Mm-hmm. And many of us, I will say, because it happened to me too, went through and spent a bunch of money and paid a bunch of taxes to Canada and to be in Canada and to study in Canada, and yet now it's being destroyed. The promise was destroyed. From Annika, again, because we were talking about the climate and carbon tax, etc. It says, quote, climate.
Oh, yeah. All 3 of these stories were supposed to be together. So we should have put this one before we took questions. But this was supposed to go into what's going on with
the fact that Canada is a carbon sink and shouldn't be having carbon taxes. From Annika, quote, climate scientist reveals the truth.
You can just play the clip. She says it very distinctly here.
Okay.
This was never, ever science. There was never, ever a global warming trend. It was data manipulated to tell a story. The Ice Age never came. First wrong prediction. But the story of the Ice Age, that did its job. The media succeeded in creating a generation of fearful believers. In a speech to the Royal Society.
And if you don't know, because you're a little younger, before the globe was warming and everything was heating up, they predicted an ice age, and this was going to wipe out a lot of civilization. That was a complete lie. And then global warming was a complete lie. So now they're going to, what's the new name of it?
Climate change?
Yeah, so now they call it climate change. So it's very indistinctive.
In 1988, Margaret Thatcher talked about the fear that people were feeling, the fear that humans were creating a global heat trap that could lead to climatic instability. This fear was gaslit by an NGO, the National Academy of Sciences, who promised the warming would cause a sea level rise of several feet over the next century. The following year, another NGO, the UN, went on the record and promised entire nations will be wiped off the face of the earth due to climate change-induced sea level rise by 2020. Well, we're still here, aren't we? Second false prediction. None of this sea level rise has eventuated, and it's exactly the same story they preach today. Extreme sea level rise and climate change refugees are nothing but a myth designed to scare people into whatever policy response is waiting in the wings. This is the first reason that the man-made climate change story is nothing more than a doomsday tale that has been evolving for the last 60 years. Think about it.
Okay, you can leave
These
it
were
there.
arguably two.
And the reason they went so hard at this, they invested so much time and effort. There was an architecture where climate change was supposed to have all these Western countries adopt all these carbon credits, carbon capture devices. Everything else was supposed to be based around the climate emergency economy.
And now they're kind of switching it pretty quickly towards AI and healthcare. And we've seen it during the WEF, Davos, and a bunch of other speeches that have been given by the traditional globalists and the globalist elite about just focusing and shifting completely towards AI and health.
Well, it was also the climate economy and the architecture was based around scarcity, and they wanted to scare everybody into scarcity. Donald Trump has flipped that on its head right now. The United States is outperforming China for the first time in 2 decades. Its GDP is growing faster than China. A lot of people do not know what's going on, and this was before the Iran war. After the Iran war, that put a huge hurt on China as well.
But from Rise of Alberta, quote, housing costs exploding, investment fleeing to the United States, young Canadians abandoning the dream of home ownership, Canada's economic model is breaking. Alberta should leave Canada and build its own prosperous future. Don't love AI videos, but here we go.
Housing prices have exploded beyond imagination. Capital is fleeing the country at rates never before seen. Food banks are turning away hungry Canadians. And immigrants who once saw Canada as their salvation are leaving in record numbers. The Canadian dream hasn't just faded, it's been obliterated. If you talk to real Canadians today, they'll tell you something almost unthinkable. Their country is dying, and it's not happening by accident. What you're about to witness is the brutal dismantling of what was once considered one of the world's most stable economies. A deliberate economic execution happening in slow motion. In most Canadian cities, you would need to earn at least double the minimum wage to afford a one-bedroom apartment, and you could forget about buying. In major cities like Toronto and Vancouver, the minimum income required to qualify for a mortgage is double or triple the median household income. This makes buying even unattainable for the top 10% of earners. To buy the average home in Canada, a family needs to earn $170,000 per year.
And the big shame of this is Mark Carney has been able to recapture the idea of nationalism in this socialist idea. And this is what's really hurting Pierre Poilievre in the polls. When the Canadian flag was a conservative thing and you were proud to be a patriot and all these things were problems, well, he's not doing as well anymore because Carney has the idea of nationalism, and all these things are things that are Donald Trump's fault. And
through TDS, yeah.
Yeah.
It is nearly impossible to buy a home in Canada today. What's even more shocking is that Canada's housing wasn't always this expensive. In fact, home ownership was possible for almost everyone just a decade ago. But in the last few years, housing prices have increased so much faster than wages that it has forced citizens to abandon the hope of home ownership entirely.
Not only that, but the true cost of housing is very different to the real cost of housing. Housing for a $1 billion condo should be around $270-something thousand, but because of the way the Canadian housing market has been managed, it costs that much.
It's going to become a lot cheaper here really quickly in Canada. The issue is private property is no longer going to exist cheap just before that happens. They want to drop the price of land to dirt cheap, and they want to do it through instability, meaning they're going to keep ceding land to First Nations, and no bank's going to give a mortgage on a house in that environment.
This graph should make every Canadian's blood run cold. Canadian businesses, investors, entrepreneurs, and professionals started taking their money out of Canada and moving it to the United States at a staggering rate. And where is that number now? I hope you're sitting down, because this statistic was so shocking that it inspired this entire investigation. By 2022, $1 trillion in book value had left Canada for the United States. That is $1,500 per person in Canada in net investment leaving Canada for the U.S. And in 2025, that number is projected to reach $500 billion in net outflow of investments from Canada to the U.S. That's about $12,500 per
Okay,
person.
you can leave it there. And I usually don't like to play AI videos, but I will say every single issue there was put in quick and concise order, and we talk about each of those things in depth, and especially how they're related to Alberta independence. And why are they related to Alberta independence? Because that is going to be the permanent future of Canada, and it's only going to get worse if you don't take the opportunity that's placed right in front of you right now. Okay.
We have one last Alberta story.
Okay, let's do that Alberta story. Then we'll take comments, and then we'll go to RUMBLE.
And then tomorrow we will do, I guess, most of the Canadian news we didn't get to today, and geopolitics.
Yeah, I usually have an Alberta section and a Canadian section that's related to Alberta independence on a national level. I'm going to do all those stories tomorrow because I guess I just gathered way too many stories.
Yes. But this is kind of personal as well to us, from Matt Alexander, quote, remember Canadian military veteran James Topp, who was maligned by Rachel Gilmore on Global News? I do. James Topp marched across Canada to bring awareness to jibby jab mandates. The article hyperlinked called him a far-right extremist, but she doesn't work at Global anymore.
And a lot of people might not know who James Topp is. He marched across Canada to fight against the jibby jab mandate. He was a former soldier that was in the military for a long time, almost 20 years. We interviewed him on the first leg of the march, walked some of it with him, and then we drove a few days later up near Hope and interviewed him again. This is one of the first videos we did on the channel after the truckers' protest,
And
on
those-
our original channel.
Yes, original channel is linked down below. It's called Nat en tu idioma, and you can find all our old English videos there too.
And he's had an extremely low profile since the march across Canada. It was very successful. That being said, I'm glad somebody is paying recognition to him, because it seems like the world's forgotten about it.
Good morning, everyone. It's August the 20th. This is a special edition of Canada Marches in which I have to address a claim made by Global News in their latest article called Good PR, Why Anti-Hate Experts Are Urging Politicians to Step Up Vetting Practices by Miss Rachel Gilmore. Now, the problem with this article is the actual hyperlink to the article says James Topp, white supremacists.
Yeah, and this is important because this is the same narrative they're going to try to build against Alberta independence. Even if you're able to successfully have a lawsuit, which the precedent is now set within Canada, luckily, that lawsuit is going to take a lot longer than the Alberta independence movement. So they'll get their benefit even if they have to make the payout at the end.
Far right. So I take issue with this. This is straight up defamation, and I intend to pursue some kind of criminal and legal action. And you can help me by filing complaints with Global News, with various Broadcasting Standards Corporation, of which the links will include in this video. Global News and mainstream media have not been my friend. They are, in fact, inciting bad feeling and hatred to somebody who has done absolutely nothing wrong, and the result of which is going to be somebody getting hurt, and it's going to be me because I'm the one on the side of the road. So you can help me with this. Reach out to them. Tell them to cease and desist inciting hatred against somebody who has done absolutely nothing wrong. Thank you very much.
And
again, that was a while ago. But
Yeah, that was a while ago. I just wanted, because that was such a big part of our channel in the beginning. Also, I want to say it's very important for if you're at these protests or counter protests to have a body camera with you, have a phone camera with you, especially when counter protesters are coming up to you.
like that crazy lady we started with.
So you can kind of set the narrative, because the mainstream media is going to set a completely different narrative, and they're going to have every single advantage with these censorship bills coming in Canada.
And Joe Rush says apparently 30,000 moved here in 2025.
30,000, yeah, but how many were implants from the federal government, from India, from China, who are going to vote against Alberta independence? Now, I'm not saying they're all going to do it, but a big portion of them are, because a big portion of them only probably have their PR at this point.
Canadian Spider-Man says Leonard Nimoy even did a TV special in 1978 about the coming global ice age. Even Mr. Spock was corrupted for F's sake.
Yeah, that never happened. That's what they were telling you for a long time. And now that we've done the research, put out all these articles, all the independent media has, we dug up the archives. They're not saying that. That's why they want to call it climate change now, not global warming, not an ice age.
But it continues to be a third rail, and I'm sure because we talked about it today, we'll probably get a little special Wikipedia link under this video explaining the proper way to talk about it.
Oh yeah, they always put the warning for anytime we talk about climate change.
And the New World Order, so maybe we'll get two now. Joe Rush says, the world was going to crash in the year 2000 as well. I remember that rubbish, the computer crash. Oh yeah, the Y2K panic.
And I was trying to show you the Matrix a few months ago.
I've seen the Matrix.
No, you haven't seen. You say,
yes, I have.
Okay. You haven't. You said you didn't see the Matrix.
Yes, I have. And unfortunately, this is some crazy insider info. I actually met the Wachowskis. One of the Wachowskis, I will call him a he, I used to be super woke, during a Pride event in Vancouver.
And how is that crazy?
Because that person's crazy, and it's crazy that I was there, and it's crazy that I was helping organize it, etc., etc. But I've learned. Canadian Spider-Man says, I got my driver's license on the Great Barrier Reef, on my dive license on the Great Barrier Reef in 2001. They told me then that it wouldn't be around in 20 years. I've been back to the Cairns, and it was still exactly the same company with the same dive sites. And I mean, that it's good. And there was a problem with the barrier reef, a little bit at least. I do believe that that was true, but it's apparently reestablished and regained a lot of the
I don't know what to believe is
fish
true
it
anymore.
lost.
When they spend 2 decades propagandizing you and it comes out most of this stuff was a lie, or like we could have made real change, we could have made real decisions and real changes that could benefit the world rather than trying to take control of everybody through a global architecture based upon climate panic.
And lies, based upon lies.
Yeah.
Drew says, on a positive note, Alberta Independence supporters have seen this BS coming and have tuned out. Exactly. And that is a positive note.
Yeah, but there's still a lot of moderates and there's still a lot of people to convince within Alberta. So,
yes.
And especially with censorship laws coming in right now, a lot of people are turning to independent media. The problem is, how long can independent media last once Carney has, number one, a majority government, and number two, 3 mass censorship bills in Canada, which he already knows how to implement because he can just look to the UK, the EU, and Australia because they implemented the same bills, and he knows what worked and what didn't work for those countries when implementing them.
Exactly. But now we are heading over to Are You and Billy. Thank you so much for your super chat, your comments, and your opinions. But it's not over yet because we will see you over at Are You and Billy in a few seconds. It's the same channel name, Nat and the Guy. You can find us there. And don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. It really does help us out. It is free. So thank you.
And we'll see you over there.
And have a great start to your week as well. But we'll see you over there in a second.